Let me tell some truth about Mr. Evil. Those of us that speak truth to power, we get suppressed. We get we get targeted,
Back in the day, there was only one media. So I'm going to say it. If they lied about that, what else have they lied about?
Who controls the media? Who controls Hollywood? Who controls the banks? Who controls our politicians? Who has a disproportionate amount of control? Who can't you criticize? Who can't you criticize? Is it anti-Semitic for me to ask that question? He arrested 5 Rothschilds. 5. No other head of state has ever done that. 5 Rothschilds. He outlawed Freemasonry and secret societies. John F. Kennedy talked about that in his famous speech. They knew that this man was against war and didn't want war. Who loves war more than anybody else? Who wins in war? Bankers. There is an angel, a fallen angel. His name is Satan. Satan loves the transgender agenda. He loves our children wanting to chemically castrate. He loves child sacrifice. He loves pedophilia. He loves all that because he wants to defile everything beautiful and virtuous, the traditional family. If it weren't for Adolf, communism would have come and swept through France, swept through Spain, and almost surely would have come into Britain.
I do believe that 9/11 was an inside job. I'm going to use common sense, guys. If you've got 2 big buildings there, if I drove a big massive bus into that building and a massive bus into 2, the buildings are not going to fall down the same way. And not only that, there's a 3rd building that fell and nothing even hit it.
9/11, here's the official story.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Bring the Noise podcast. Today I've got a man here this is probably going to be the most controversial podcast I think I've done, to be honest with you. There's a lot of people that are going to say what you're doing, talking to this guy and that, but for me, what I've learned in the last 3 years and what's happened to me, when I get injured from this jag, I call it a jag because YouTube don't like the V word.
Right, they don't like that.
No, so once I get injured from this jag, I soon realised that there was a heavy amount of censorship, and I've never ever been subjected to being silenced. And when this happened, I then started to question a lot of things. Why would you censor someone who'd done what the government told us to do? Why would you censor someone who took it thinking they were doing the right thing? But then when they took it and nearly died from it, why would you censor me?
Seems like the truth is the problem, hey? They operate in the realm of lies. The truth teller is the most dangerous person of all, the sword of truth, as I call it. It's and yet it's the only thing that could liberate humanity,
Yeah, well, I'll do an introduction. So today I've got a man here. His name's Ken O'Keefe, and I've seen some of your podcasts, mate, and I've got a lot of questions, and I'm actually, I've never been so glued to my TV ever so much in all my life. When I watched you do a podcast with a gentleman that I was on as well with, and people might call us conspiracy theorists, or they might call us right wing or anything like that. At the end of the day, I'm only trying to get an understanding of what the fuck is going on in my country and also around the world, Ken. And for me, since this has happened to me, I now question everything. And I do question things that I was taught back in school. And I do wonder if I was lied to back then. And more people are actually coming to this way of thinking nowadays. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why is this becoming a bit more acceptable now? Why are people wanting to speak to you? Why are people saying this? Why are people coming to this way of kind of thinking? But I can only sit and ask questions. I can only kind of gauge what's going on, and I can only, what I say, I can't 100% here and say, oh, this is all factual, but I'm allowed to turn around and question everything I've ever been taught, because like I said, if we fast forward to 10 years from now, what we'll get is in the history books is we had a deadly pandemic, and then, people were dying left, right and centre, all these numbers of all these people that died from this virus. But then what we find, and then what happens is they then say that we brought out this life-saving vaccine that saved millions of lives. Is that the history I know? Is that the history that you'll know? I don't think it will be, mate.
There's a lot in there, conspiracy theorist or conspiracy theory, that's a term coined by the CIA, and it's part of the method of mind control. The CIA, MK Ultra, people would do well to look at what that is. And ultimately, what they want is for an unquestioning, submissive population that accepts what they're told from the mainstream media, which I've called the prostitutes of propaganda now for 2 decades plus. And keeping in mind that I've been a guest of the so-called media, mostly adversarial. Some media, if they're real, what we should be doing is indulging in a conversation. Now, if we do so, even if we disagree, there's a way to have a conversation that is respectful, and if necessary, we'll agree to disagree. Now, there are some things that there's no room to agreement to disagreement. For instance, those that would prey on our children, pedophilia, which is rampant. Do we hear stories in the media about just how prevalent pedophilia is? No, we don't. So they're hiding that truth. Do they tell us about the epidemic of missing children? No, they don't. What they tell us is a bunch of smoke and mirrors, bread and circuses, gossip, Hollywood, celebrity, all of this kind of nonsense, which really has nothing to do with anything, especially for those, in your case, I have nothing but the deepest of admiration and respect, because rather than just accept your lot as a victim, what you did was you voiced your truth, regardless of how much the system would wish to shut you out. And by doing so, what you've done is really emboldened others to also speak out. And this is something that I've done in my life too. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, nobody could say that I'm insincere. Really, if I am insincere, wow, I'm a first-class bullshitter. I should be working in Hollywood, man. I'm a damn good actor if that be the case. The truth of the matter is that I worship the truth. For me, truth is God, and God is truth. And when we really do speak the truth, we find that rather than get favor as we should, when we had days in the past where nobility, integrity, honor, those were things that we revered. Instead, what we have is corrupt politicians, lying media, and those that seem to be the most slovenly, disgustingly corrupt, immoral individuals, say Keir Starmer, someone like that. They get rewarded with prime minister roles, and those of us that speak truth to power, we get suppressed, we get targeted, And to be honest, hey man, bring it on. I don't care what the reward is for speaking lies. I don't care what kind of material reward you might give me. I could be a great spokesperson for the Israelis, quite frankly. I can bullshit with the best of them. But really the basis of my ability to cut through these lies is that I know the truth. And we are living in amazing times right now. Too many people, it directly, have lost loved ones, believing, just as you believe, that what you were doing was the right thing. And they fostered these lies, such as, I remember, because I'm the guy who never wore the mask, ever. I'm the guy who recognized that I was a human guinea pig as a Marine many years ago, 3 decades ago. So I stopped trusting my government a long time ago. It doesn't mean that nothing they say is truth, but pretty much 90% of what they say is a lie. So whatever they're saying is probably the opposite of the truth.
Yeah, to go back to what you said there, I mean, we'll get a little bit of history regarding yourself and how you came on this journey of what you're, because similar to yourself, it sounds like you've been a victim of something that's a conspiracy theory or whatever, and it's led you on this path, and it's exactly the same as me. I say it all the time, you know, I wasn't a conspiracy theorist until I became the victim of one. And for me, all I'm doing is questioning a hell of a lot. And I think anyone who is down this kind of route now and do start to see the manipulation of the mainstream media, who are losing, by the way, the mainstream media are fucking losing at this point. More people are starting to question a hell of a lot. And I think that's the way we all need to be now. We can't sit back and, you know, listen to the propaganda machine and listen to this brainwashing, if you want to call it. That's what the TV does. You know, I've learned that the hard way.
There's one thing that I would say to that, and while everybody will adopt their own perspective and their own way to communicate, I'm actually grateful for the things that I'm, quote, victim of. As an example of that, when I was a Marine, I was damn good at what I did. I can honestly say I was as good as it gets. I was a machine gunner. I was in the infantry. My job was to carry the squad automatic weapon. This is a very important job in the infantry. If you're going to war, the job that I had was critical, and it's a huge amount of responsibility. And this is not a job that would be given to somebody who is not doing things to the highest of standards. When I did not obey an unlawful order, when I did the right and honorable thing, keeping in mind that the Marine Corps, right, this is a master class in manipulation, indoctrination. They used to have commercials. If you look at the commercials for the United States Marine Corps back in the 80s, they're really good. And they one of the commercials was, it showed like knights, as we remember, like the Knights of the Round Table, right? And it actually starts showing like this scene of like, you know, King Arthur or, you know, the Knights of the Round Table. And these were knights who took an oath, and they were ready and prepared to die in the battle for nobility, for the protection of those who were not as strong. And this is what I thought I was signing up for. I believed that my nation was the greatest, man, that we were, you know, without a doubt, we're clearly the greatest. I believe that to my core, to the degree that I was willing to kill or be killed as an infantryman. And when I did the right and honorable thing, which you said in your commercials, the few, the proud, the Marines. And then I got screwed hard for doing the right and honorable thing and actually obeying and honoring my oath. Instead of me adopting the perspective, which a lot of people do, sadly, they become bitter. They become those people that you really don't like hanging out with because they're just kind of nasty. You know, they're just negative energy all the time. For me, when I got screwed over, it ended up being motivation. It really motivated me, like, okay, all right. Same thing with like my father. You know, my father was abused badly as a child. I didn't know this up until just a few years ago. But he was so badly damaged, he didn't know how to love his only son, you know, me, his only son. And, you know, in that sense, every child, especially a boy, wants to be respected and loved by his father. But rather than me be bitter about that, I was blessed by the love of my mother. And she made up for the fact that my daddy didn't love me proper. And I used my father's lack of love and abuse to motivate me, like, I will impress you, Dad. I will. In fact, I joined the Marine Corps. I had no intention of joining the military. None.
How old were you?
I was 19 years old. And I had a life that... I was a waiter in a French restaurant making damn good money. I was living in an apartment overlooking the Pacific Ocean with floor-to-ceiling windows. I could literally lie back in my bed and watch the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. I had a great car, great job. I was having fun with the ladies, you know, as a teenager does. And I saw this movie, Full Metal Jacket, and I was like, that's what I need. And I didn't realize it at the time, but really what I was doing was, I will impress you, Dad. I will. You know, he was in the Navy. You know, the Navy's, quite frankly, they're pussies, man. You motherfuckers drive us there, and then we do the job. You know, the Marines are the ones. We're the first ones in. We're the last ones to leave. And if you look at the history of the Marine Corps, that's clearly what we are. We're hard, you know, especially the infantry. So little did I know at the time, really, but there was something buried in my subconscious and even on my conscious level that I want my daddy's love. I'm going to impress you. So rather than be a victim, all it's done is just motivate me to reach for the highest of the highs, to do things that command respect. And I can honestly say at this point, you know, many decades later, it's been a blessing for me. I would encourage people, whatever injustice you've been through, first off, join the club. How many of us have not been screwed over at some point, some way? Many have been traumatized deeply, whether they were molested as children, maybe a woman who's been raped. You're the guy passed over for the job promotion where some jerk off is getting the job. Whatever. Everybody has some story like this, and basically everybody has a multitude of stories like this. If you want to play the victim role, kind of like black people today in America want reparations, like, listen, join the club. I'm Irish. The British tried to genocide us for 800 years, so shut up with your little sob story. I don't care. And by the way, we're the white niggers of Europe. No blacks, no dogs, no Irish. So I'm sorry, black man. I'm sorry, brown man. I'm sorry, whoever the hell you are. We got our own story. Get over yourself. In the Marine Corps, actually, we have this thing, you know, where lesser men will be whining and Marine Corps, quit your bitching, man. Get it done. You know, whether it's cleaning the latrine and smelling all the shit and piss, whether it's living in a hole in the ground, whether it's not taking a shower for a month. I had a tick that bit into my ball sack, and I had to try and get that tick off my balls. I've gone through swarms of mosquitoes and camo paint and discomfort. That shit just made me harder. I ain't no victim, man. In fact, I would say comfort is the real enemy.
So what war was it that you get flown out to? Was it the...
I was in the first Gulf War, so
Gulf
Operation Desert Shield, Operation Desert Storm.
And so you've obviously went and you want to do it to impress your father, but you're obviously quite patriotic about your country. You want to serve your country, and obviously you've went out there and...
I wasn't like a super patriot, just to be clear. It wasn't I'm going to go... I had no intention of joining the military. It was more about impressing my father than it was. I was, of course, proud of my country. I definitely believed my nation was the greatest. But, you know, again, it was mostly motivation to prove to my father that he had a worthy son, a good son. And God bless him. You know, he was not capable of ever being that father. He died quite young. I never said, as an example, rather than be a victim, right? A victim might say, fuck you, Dad. I fucking hate you. I hope you rot in hell. I never said anything like that at all. I never did. In fact, I told him before he died, even though he was abusive up till the end, I said, Dad, I just want you to know that even though you may not care or appreciate it, I forgive you. I love you. I love you. To be able to transcend and go above whatever victimization you may have endured and just take it as a lesson in life. I'm a firm believer in turning negatives into positive. This is what you do. Rather than sit here and cry foul and whatever, seek, this, public benefit and just whine and be miserable with everybody around you. I mean, in the time that I've already spent with you before this interview has begun, you're a pleasant guy. You're someone that I would like to hang out with, You could be a miserable little sod, but you've chosen not to be.
Nah, misery likes company, my friend.
It does indeed.
I don't want to be around miserable people. I want to, for me, honestly, Ken, I want unity, and I want everybody to come as a collective, and I want people to realise that it's not your fellow man that's the problem. It's clearly a mainstream media issue, and it's clearly a government, and it's clearly something a lot higher. I mean, that's my only... what I'm viewing, and I'm viewing this world in a terrible light right now, and people I think are blind flagging into, I don't know, just craziness. But obviously we've just had an election 24 hours ago, but we can get into that. So,
well, that's the thing, here's some undeniable facts, which would, one of the books that I'll write is the truth, quote, anti-Semitic. There's so many things to unpack in that short little statement. One of them is that the Palestinians are Semitic, and those are my family over there, and they're dying, they're being genocided. The people who claim to be Semitic aren't even Semitic. They don't even come from that region. My point is that they control the language, they control the money, they control Hollywood, they control our politicians. This tiny minority. Yeah. Is it anti-Semitic for me to point out that this one little group has such a disproportionate amount of control? It's the truth is what it is. It's the truth. If it was Chinese, or let's say Africans, that were filling the cabinet of the British government or the Scottish government, would you be racist if you pointed out the fact that everybody who's making the decisions for you is African or Chinese? No, it wouldn't. But there's this one group that has this hugely disproportionate amount of control, and you're, quote, anti-Semitic for pointing that out? It's the truth. So is the truth anti-Semitic? Maybe that's why they don't like truth tellers. And I'm not saying they're the only problem. There's plenty of us, what we qualify and what they call goyim. We outnumber them. We outnumber them. And you divide and rule. If we ever came together and realized, guess what? What's good for you, let's say you're a black man, let's say you're Chinese. What's good for you is good for me. What's not good for you is not good for me. As Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I care about my family, which I consider the human family. All human beings are my brother or sister. I may not like them. I may not appreciate what they're doing. But at the same time, if there are children dying, being burned alive over there, that's my problem. I'm a human being. Just because my kids are safe over here, does that mean I should turn a blind eye? And what does that say about us as men? That you don't care. Oh, only if it's your kids. No. I'm part of one human family.
Yeah. You said earlier on when you were back fighting in the Gulf War that you had an order that you didn't do because you said it didn't sit right with you. What was that order?
So it wasn't as drastic as, say, for instance, if we went into a village somewhere and my superior, we had prisoners and he said, execute them. That would be a clear example of where, no, your duty is to refuse that order. But any order that's unlawful, according to the oath I took was, you state your name, hereby swear to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, to fight all enemies, foreign and domestic, to follow the orders of those appointed over me, and to the orders of the Commander-in-Chief, the President, according to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. Now, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and it's similar for the British military or any military, it's a misnomer to think that we're just supposed to follow orders. We are supposed to follow lawful orders, not unlawful orders. Getting back to your question, the unlawful order that was given to my unit, we were on a ship in the Mediterranean. It was 1990. 1990. It was summertime. This is part of our responsibility. Where I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, but we go on what's called on floats. We go out on the ships and then we patrol certain areas. It might be the Pacific. In our case, it was the Mediterranean. So we sailed across the Atlantic Ocean over to Rota, Spain, and then into the Mediterranean through the Gibraltar Strait. And we were off the coast of France, the south of France. And it was very hot. And for those who haven't been on the military, but maybe you've been on a cruise ship, this is not the Love Boat, okay? The way we live is, 3 high on racks or beds, very cramped quarters, kind of like a coffin, really. It's like very cramped. These are troop transport. It's hot, it's crowded, it's uncomfortable. And what we had was a situation where we're in the lower bowels of the ship, And we had our berthing area, the lower ranks, which is packed very tight. And then in the berthing area where you have to go through a metal hatch into the next berthing area, which is where people live or working areas, was the staff NCOs. So these are the guys who've been in the military, or the Marines in this case, at least 5, 10 years, but a lot of them are like 15, 20, even 30-year Marines. So these are hardened Marines. Now, one of the tenets of the Marine Corps is leadership by example. So to illustrate that point, here's a leader that's not a leader by example. The leader not by example is charge, and he's pointing which way all the lower ranks are supposed to go. The leader by example is follow me, and he's the first one up front. He's the one who's going to take the bullet. Yeah. He's the one who's going to give strength, courage to the lower ranks. He's the one who doesn't just say what to do. He does what he is commanding his lower ranks to do. He sets the example. In this case, our staff NCOs, because every time we went through their berthing area, we'd have to open up the hatch, open it up, go through, walk through there, open up the hatch on the other side, go through. Every time we open up that hatch, some of the air conditioning, which was minimal, would escape, and their area would get hotter, less comfortable. And so what they did was they issued an order that was totally unlawful. What they said was us lower ranks could no longer go through their berthing area, and the only people that can issue such an order is the captain of the ship or the highest enlisted Navy guy who's the chief. The reason is because there's order, there's work, and there are things to be done. Now, keep in mind these hatches that we go through. I'm 6'1", so when you go through these hatches, they're kind of compact. These are steel hatches, so you can seal these things watertight. If the ship takes a hit, then you'll close off those areas and it'll be watertight, and whoever's in there is going to die. They're going to drown. So when you walk through these hatches, if you don't lower your head enough, you're going to hit your head on that steel. Trust me, it don't feel good, and we've all done that at one point or another. Now, what they were doing was telling us we couldn't go through their berthing area. Now, the problem with that was this was the most direct way to get from our berthing area to the places that we went several times a day. The chow hall, so we ate morning, afternoon, evening, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So 3 times a day we would have at least been going through there. And then we'd also be going that way to get to the flight deck where we could get air, to get out of the coffin and just go get some fresh air, maybe have a smoke, whatever. They ordered us not to do that. That forced us to go 3 times as far through working areas of the ship, which interfered with the Navy, increased the safety hazards, because now we got to go through 3 times as many hatches. And why did they do this? So they could be more comfortable. So what is the lesson here? When you get high rank, screw the lower ranks? Is that leadership by example? No, it's not. And it's an unlawful order. You had no authority to do that. Now, what I did was a cardinal sin. A cardinal sin. Now, the way that you're supposed to do it is that if you have an issue or if there is something that needs to be objected to, then you would go through your chain of command, which means in principle, what I was supposed to do was go to my staff NCOs, the ones that were issuing the unlawful order, and say, hey, this is wrong and you shouldn't be. I'm telling you, as a Marine, there is no way. If I went there and I said that, not only would they wouldn't laugh at me, they would give me a world of shit. And so why would I do that? That's not going to get it. They're the ones doing the wrong thing. Why would I go to? It's like the fox guarding the hen house. What are you, stupid? The fox is not going to guard the hen house, all right? He's not going to do the right thing. He's going to eat your damn chickens, all right? So what did I do? I jumped my chain of command and I went to the Navy chief. I wrote out what they were doing. I handed that to him. I told him personally. And he did what he was supposed to do. And it wasn't good for the staff NCOs. He went to the staff NCOs directly. And by the way, there's a rivalry between the Marines and the Navy to start. Like, really, I think they're a little bit jealous of us because we are the men that really do the man's work. And at the same time, we need them as Marines. Like, they get us there. If we don't have them, like, how are we going to get there? What, are we going to walk the whole way over the sea? No. So the chief, understanding this rivalry that exists, went and read the staff NCO's the riot act, and he made it clear that they were to pass down the order. Okay, you're allowed. Okay, stop. That order's done. Carry on as you were, and that means they're going to lose a little bit of air conditioning. They're going to be less comfortable, and they got read the riot act for the Navy from the Navy direct. So when this happened, they were pissed, and they wanted to know who the hell it was. And I remember when my squad leader, Sergeant Mays, he got back from a meeting with the staff NCO. So all the squad leaders and all of the guys that aren't staff NCOs, they were called in, and they were told what the hell is this? And they gave the order, find out who is this? Who is this? Now, one of the other things that was key to me, and it was what I was sold in these commercials: the few, the proud, the Marines, honor, integrity, leadership by example. Where's the honor in being the guy who said what you were doing wrong, but not owning up to it? No, there ain't no honor in that. So I did not hesitate 1 second. I knew the consequence. I could have done this secretly. I could have passed on a note, let them know, this is what's happening. And I could have crawled away and just let it be that. And then I could have had the little secret to myself. But I didn't see any honor in that, and I still agree. No, that's not. Own up to it. If you did it, own up to it. So Sergeant Mays came back, as did all the squad leaders, and their job was to find out who this is. And I remember him saying, man, just got back from a meeting. Staff NCOs are pissed. And he had no idea. And he said, anybody know anything about this? And I immediately was like, yeah, I did it. And he looked at me like, oh. Because he knew, first off, I'm in a world of shit. I am in a world of shit for doing this. But he also knew he was going to get shit too, because I'm in his squad. Of all the squads, I'm the guy in his squad that did this. He looked at me, and I knew, but I didn't fully understand the total gravity. Not that it would have changed anything. And he just shook his head, and he walked back to go tell my platoon sergeant it was me. So he went off for a bit, and he came back, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes, half hour later, and he said, come with me. And I remember following him in the ship, right? And there's a lot of places in the ship, but I had never been to this place that we were going, and we were going down decks and going this way and that way, and we're getting further and deeper into the bowels of the ship. And I'm kind of laughing to myself oh, Jesus. I'm kind of expecting all the staff NCOs, these hard-ass Marines, to be waiting for me. And people can go overboard, man. I mean, this is not a joke, man. This is not the Boy Scouts here. If you piss these guys off, they have rank over you and everything. There's a lot they can do to you. And he takes me here, there, and there. Eventually, I get down. Thankfully, it wasn't all the squad leaders. It was just my platoon sergeant, but I remember it vividly to this day. He was sitting down, and I reported in front of him. And he looked at me with this look of disgust in his eyes, pure fucking scorn. And my name was Nichols at the time. I had changed my name legally, lawfully, not to hide or anything. I'm Irish, and I changed my name to O'Keefe, which I am actually an O'Keefe and an O'Donnell. And he said to me, Nichols, in my 17 years in the Marine Corps, you're the biggest piece of shit I've ever known, and I'm going to fry your ass first chance I get. He wasn't joking, boy. He was not joking. Within a month, I was a dereliction of duty charged. It was absolute bullshit. And within another few months, I was being denied leave when we were just about to go off to a war, which meant I wouldn't be able to see my family. So I broke that order. I reached a point fairly quickly where I knew I was being punished for doing the right thing. And what it did was I could have been a victim, right? I could have kind of withered down. They even had a volunteer boxing match, and volunteer, it's not volunteer. If you're the pussy who doesn't volunteer for the volunteer boxing match, you're just going to get more shit in the end. So I volunteered, and they put the most athletic like strong, like black dude up against me, and the whole platoon knew, like he wanted this guy to beat my ass, and I ended up knocking his headgear off, and it was the only time in all the whole boxing match nobody was doing this. They were putting people up. They were boxing. This guy and I were, it was time, our time. Ding, fucking, we get in there, and he came after me, and I fucking went off, and I just clocked him. Bam! His headgear got knocked off. Everybody was like shocked, and I knew like the platoon sergeant was like hating me even more, And they had to put the headgear back on him, and ding, and we got back, and I knocked it off again. Nobody knocked anybody else's headgear off. I was the only one that did it, and I did it twice, and they had to stop the fight. So the lesson there for everybody was, listen, if you want to tangle with me, if you want to go ahead and make the platoon sergeant happy and try and beat my ass, okay, but, I'll tell you what, you're probably going to need 2 or 3 of you. And I swear to God, I'm going to fucking hurt one of you, at the very least. So my point is that the next 2 years, I had 2 more years of this, and I went off to a war, and I was treated like a piece of shit for doing the right and honorable thing. I did not just follow orders. Don't we hear that about World War II? Just follow? Yeah. No, I'm the guy who didn't just follow the order. And I have said in many interviews since, when they order you to go fight for the Jewish state of Israel, to be participant in this genocide, don't refuse the order. I say it now. I said it back then. I did it back then. So after 2 years of this shit, by the time I came out, I had a major chip on my shoulder. And I realized I was wrong about the Marine Corps. And if I was wrong about the Marine Corps, which I was ready to kill or die for, what else am I wrong about? And that's where I studied voraciously. And there were 2 things when I came out of the Marine Corps I vowed, and I've honored that too. I've honored my oath, and the 2 things that I committed to was I'll never give up my freedom again, ever. And again, if I'm wrong about the Marines, what else? And I studied. I wanted to know the truth.
So obviously, you've done the right thing, as you said, and they've gave you hell, pretty much. That's your uniform behind you, I'd imagine. Is that correct? Is that?
That's my, yeah, and that one, that's for liberating Kuwait and combat action and all that stuff.
So when you look at that now, what do you see it as honor, or what do you think when you look at that now?
You know what's funny is I love the Marines, and I love the Marines in the sense that, especially now, like this is 35 years ago that I did this. Look at the pussification of men, the feminizing of men, the gay transgender agenda, which is just absolutely insane. This pussification of the male, I mean, literally, like we used to have men, real men. Now we've got these woke fucking pussy cuck little pathetic excuses of men. So when I look at that, I don't hate the Marines. I actually love it. The training did make me harder. So many things I learned: discipline, attention to detail, leadership by example. They showed me how not to do it, but there's so many good things. And if we truly did defend our nation, rather than these wars of aggression and invasions and occupations and war crimes and all these things, I would push my child. I have 2 sons to join the military, because I think we all should understand that as men, we have a duty. Our duty is to protect and defend our women first and foremost. We're supposed to protect them, and we're supposed to provide for them. They're supposed to raise our children. They're the only ones that can carry that baby in the womb. They're superior to us in this way. They have breasts and memories, and they can make milk, and they can feed our baby direct. They have a connection to our children deeper than we can as men. We plant the seed, but they're the ones that are supposed to be giving our children everything they need to be good men and women. Instead, we've got a woke reality where gay couples are raising children and adopting, and we're teaching all sorts of twisted values that have nothing to do with the traditional family. And that, make no mistake about it, the attack on Christianity, the attack on Islam, the attack on the traditional family could not be more obvious.
I mean, I've not got anything against people that might be gay and they raise children and stuff. I've nothing against that. I've just always had major questions when it's been pushed into schools, this stuff. I don't think that children need to be educated in this way. I think the flag, for me, I don't see it as something it was meant to be now. I see it as something that's, I don't want to say dumb and children, but again, children are sponges. You can make a child believe whatever they want. You know, if you can turn around to a wee boy and say, you can become a little girl if you want. You know,
well, that's where I don't have. Listen, I mean, I remember in my 20s, I ended up working for Greenpeace after the Marine Corps. Funny enough, and I made friends with a guy who was vegan. I was vegan before anybody knew what that crap was 30 years ago. And the same reasons why I do what I do today is why I became a vegan. I met this guy, and it wasn't a meal. For me, I'm Irish, man. Meat and potatoes, man. If it doesn't have meat, what the hell is that? If it didn't have meat, it wasn't a meal. That was my attitude. That was my opinion. But I worked at Greenpeace, and I became really good friends with this guy. He was gay. Gay as gay gets. Gay. Like he was a Hollywood prostitute gay, right? And at the same time, he was vegan. But when I didn't know anything about it, and I said to him, effectively, like literally, I said, what's that faggot hippie shit? Like, what the hell is that? And he told me about the factory farms and the slaughterhouse, the abattoir. I'd never thought about it. You know, I just go order a Big Mac or eat whatever my mom puts on the table. But when he told me this, not only did I realize all this incredible, horrendous suffering and profiteering that we are indulging in with factory farming and all this kind of stuff, but he was proving to me that I didn't have to eat that stuff because he's doing fine. The guy's vegan and he's doing fine. So I had to accept something that a lot of people would just reject for whatever reason. I had to accept the fact that at the end of the day, the reason why I'm eating meat is not because I have to eat it. It's because I like it. I enjoy the flavor. But my enjoyment, apparently, in my young mind, this is my 20s now, in my young mind, I realized, like, okay, wait, so my enjoyment takes precedence over not only the life of these creatures, but they're going to be tortured, mutilated, slaughtered, and put through hell so that I can have a Big Mac that I like. I didn't like that. I never thought about it, but I didn't like it. And I thought, okay, either I accept my own hypocrisy or I stop contributing to this. And bam, like that, I became vegetarian, and within 9 months I was vegan. This guy was gay, right? We talked about stuff. And, you know, this is a real insight to me that you know, my enemies would like to try and turn this in. They'll cut and paste and whatnot. But I ended up becoming best friends with this guy, gay. David was his name, is his name. And I respected him so much, his knowledge and the way he carried himself and the consistency as opposed to hypocrisy. It impressed me so much we became best friends. And I could tell that he was attracted to me. You know, that he was like, he wished I was gay. And I cared about him so much, and even I will go so far as to say loved him as a brother. I loved him. And I felt like, wow, if I almost wish I could be bisexual at least, because I've never questioned my sexuality. I'm heterosexual, man. I don't fantasize about men and the sexual acts of men that are homosexual, bisexual, whatever, progressive, whatever the hell you want to call it. But I cared about him so much that I wished I could have shared that with him. But I'm not gay. But a lot of our kids today, because of the social engineering and the normalizing of homosexuality, is now so prevalent that the last figures I've seen, it's maybe 10-15% of our kids are now identifying as either homosexual or bisexual. This is not healthy.
Or non-binary.
Huh?
Non-binary is a new one I hear that
yes.
They don't identify
LGBTQ.
either.
What?
Yeah.
Where are we going? I'll tell you who would enjoy this progress that we're indulging in. You know, while we haven't got into spirituality at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put it forward. For those of us who do understand that there is a God, that's my master up there. That's my only master. I love him. I serve him. I pray to him. I pray to him today. I'll pray to him tomorrow. I thank him profusely for everything he's done for me, the Father. And there is an angel, a fallen angel. His name is Satan. Satan's like the quintessential brat who was gifted with so much, but his arrogance, his hubris was such that he could not humble himself just a bit, and therefore he effectively turned his back on God. He wanted to become God. Satan loves the transgender agenda. He loves our children wanting to chemically castrate. He loves child sacrifice. He loves pedophilia. He loves all that because he wants to defile everything beautiful and virtuous, the traditional family. So we've replaced the traditional family now with this woke gay agenda. Here is what I will say, and I don't care how controversial it is. I hearken back to the days. I don't dispute, I don't know, but I don't dispute that God made those that are gay. I don't. However, don't you dare have your parade and parade around in French kiss and make me explain to my child why these two men are French kissing over there. I don't even want to see that with a straight couple. In a society that's healthy, that doesn't literally, look at our children walking around. We've got teenage girls and boys, girls in particular, walking around with their cleavage out, with high skirts. Maybe that's why pedophilia is so prevalent, eh? In other societies like Iran, where I've been, you don't even have that with adults. You don't have that. We have replaced the virtuous, beautiful aspects of motherhood, the most beautiful thing that a female has to offer, with this women's lib, even to the point where women want to go fight in combat and shit. This is taking away from the most beautiful thing that a woman has to offer, and it's also putting us men into a position where we're now mums, you know, the mum in the family, and playing that role, and now we have gay people. What is that teaching a kid if we normalize homosexuality as parenthood? First off, if you are homosexual, you ain't gonna procreate. We'll all go extinct. One generation, boom, done. If we all start having anal sex or lesbian relationships. So let's be real here. We better keep it in the minority and an extreme minority. And how about if you keep that in the bed? If you want to be having anal sex and whatever you want to do, go to the gay club, but don't parade around in front of the children and demoralize and debauch our society to such a point, and then normalize it to the point now where we've got a large percentage of children who are even, why are our children being introduced to sexual matters before even puberty? We shouldn't be thinking about sexual matters as 5, 6, 7, 8, 10-year-olds. It's wrong, is what it is. But we have to, right? Because we got to explain to the kids why John and Dave are like, acting like mom and dad. There's so many problems. Satan loves it. And our progressive woke stupidity is going to destroy us. So there is a way for us to cohabitate. I've had great times, by the way, with gay people. I've like danced in gay clubs. I dance, and they throw great parties, and that's the right place. Go to the club. You know, go to an adult place and go ahead, whatever. Kiss each other, do what you want. But doing it in front of our kids and normalizing that stuff, I disagree with anybody who thinks that's progress.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think when it became a bit scary for me was, I've said this in other the podcasts before, but, you know, I used to, when I was in my bed and I didn't think I was going to be here, I was watching like what was happening in America, and I was seeing all the, and I was like, that's not going to come to Scotland, this stuff. There's no way that we're going to have this kind of stuff. You know, Scotland's fucking, do you know what I mean? Glaswegian.
William Wallace, man.
Aye,
Come
like,
on.
do you know what I mean? William Wallace, the kilt's turned into a skirt now, you know, and I'm sitting there going, that's not going to come here. And like, we've got a thing in Edinburgh, it's called the Edinburgh Fringe every year, and next minute I see the Edinburgh Fringe last year was drag queen story time, and I was like, is this for real?
You know what? I have to point this out. My youngest son, this actually made national news, was going to school. This is like 3 years ago, I think. 3, maybe 4. Made national news. The headmaster of the school, funny enough, is gay. Right? Okay. All right, so we've got a gay headmaster. the way the story was told is that his transvestite friend was outside the school or came over, and he impromptu invited this transvestite into my son's school. No parental authority, no consultation, none of that. So now my 9-10-year-old son has a man dressed as a woman in like the stripper kind of outfit who comes in with the gay headmaster, and they proceed to have audience participation, dancing, and stuff like this. I asked my son, I said, how did you feel, when this was happening? And he said, like, why are we doing this? That was his thinking as a 9-10-year-old boy. It made national news, and, but is it stopped? No. There's things like this going on all the time. We are confusing our prepubescent children with this type of madness. And at the very least, I defy anyone to justify why we should be discussing such matters with our children.
Yeah, I want to go into another subject now. Again, this is going to be very controversial, and a lot of people are, like I said, for me,
I don't hate anybody. Let me make it clear now for those that want to, be controversial. Listen, I wish no harm nor foul. None. I have no angst towards those who choose to do this, but there is a time and a place. When you start to harm my child, like they did in that school, or when you start to push these things in front and normalize this stuff, that's where it crosses the line, and I don't care how controversial that is.
Well, I'm about to get into something that I think everybody's going to be like, this is real controversial. Like I said, TK, for me,
especially in Scotland, eh?
Well, what I'm going to say is, going back to what I said at the start, what happened to me, I was a conspiracy theorist. I've been labelled misinformation. I don't even think I'll get this podcast on YouTube. I'm on my last strike. I don't know where I'm going to put this, but I'm going to need to figure it out.
Rumble, and the other
there's not enough traction on Rumble, so I don't know what I'm going to do. But for me, like I said, I've sat back for years. I've seen, like I said, we fast forward to 10 years from now, they'll say that COVID was deadly and the vaccine saved millions of lives and all this. And I'll be like, that's not the history that I fucking know. And that's definitely not the history that is not how it is. Because we do now know, with a lot of information that's coming out, these things were never safe and effective. In my honest opinion, they're not even a fucking vaccine at this point in time. But it's still getting handed out. I've had to sit back and I've had to watch people continue to keep taking it. I'm still continuing to have people see people in the news, drop them down, heart issues, all this stuff going on. And I'm sitting going like that to myself.
I read this book in my 20s, Naked Empress, The Great Medical Fraud by Hans Rüsch. This basically gives you a history of so-called Western medicine. Before Western medicine, we used to understand the principles of natural healing. Natural healing was replaced with the history of Western medicine, which basically is the Rockefellers, who took a poison byproduct of the petroleum industry. They labeled it Nujol, and they packaged it as a cure for cancer and all sorts of things, herpes, all sorts of things. Needless to say, it was none of those things. It was a toxic compound which harmed the people. What we see today is 100 plus years later of that same lie. If I'm 55 years old and I'll run circles around 20-year-olds. I've had 2.5 hours sleep tonight. I had some family business. I'm sitting here. I'm fit and fiddle. I'll go out. I went to the gym earlier today. I'll go out to the gym probably before I go to bed tonight. I take care of myself. I'm fit. I don't take drugs other than the recreational drugs that I've chosen to take of my own free will. And I've said this over and over. I trust Tyrone selling me crack on the street corner more than I do the guy with a white coat and a PhD on the wall. The same ones that told you that, yes, this is for your safety. Yeah. And you're nearly dead for that. So I'm sorry, man. I want justice. I don't need no violence. I want justice. If you're criminally incompetent at best, the doctors. At best.
And I've been saying it that, I think one day all these doctors and nurses, they're going to one day go, fuck, what have I done? They're going to have a batch number against their name and all that. But
Do you know the suicide rates have gone up for doctors? Did you know that?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I believe they're either like veterans commit suicide 22 a day for like a decade and a half after the so-called war on terror. That's because we go off to these wars and we kill women and children, and we commit crimes, and it becomes such a burden that we end up offing ourselves or becoming homeless or beating our wives or becoming alcoholics. Same thing with doctors. They made money from this. They may have profited, but how's that going to do for your conscience? And the ones who are coming to the reality of what they've done, well, imagine how you'd feel.
Yeah.
And regardless of how much money, is your 3-car garage and your Bentley going to make you feel better about killing innocent people who trusted you? Good luck.
Yeah, I want to get into this topic now, and we'll probably dive back into these jags later on, but...
And maybe you can just cut out the stuff about homosexuality and stuff. To be honest, put the stuff in there that can be put out there, and whatever. I take no offense at it.
I try and leave it as edited. I try and not edit these down at all, mate. I try and leave it as raw and real as possible, because I think, what is it they say? Courage is contagious, and more people standing up and taking a stand for what's coming. In my opinion, I don't know if it's going to be stopped because a certain man's just been elected, and we'll get into that later on. And like I said, for me, I was under the impression it might be good because obviously he's working next to RFK, and I'm hoping he might be, but we'll see. We'll get into that later on. But obviously, one of the reasons I do know is because obviously you touch on him, and again, I'm going to say a very controversial topic this, but again, I'm going to say for anybody listening to what I'm saying is, they've shut me down more than I've ever been silenced in my life. I've never been so suppressed in all my life. And what I'm saying to people is, there's more alternative media out there now. Back in the day, there was only one fucking media. And there was only one media that you had to listen to what that box or the radio said back in the day. So I'm going to say it. If they lied about that, what else have they fucking lied about? And someone passed this along to me. And at first, when I first heard all this, I was like, nah, surely not. Surely not. If they've lied about that, if they lied about a man who they've told us was this evil man back in the day, which I don't know. I'm sitting here like that. I don't know. I've been told that this man was the biggest threat to me, my society back in the day. But now I look and I go, did I get that wrong as well? Have I been indoctrinated to believe that? Or were these people...
I believed it.
Were these people defending their country, and were we the enemy? That's the way my brain goes now, Ken. I'm not saying to say it's 100% truth, but what I'm saying is, when I watched Europa, The Last Battle, I was sitting there going, wow. And am I right in saying, and we'll get into this soon, what is similar happened to now? That man was against back in those days with the LGBT stuff. This was a man who we were told was horrible. No, I'm not sitting saying he's a saint. I think from what I've seen now, it could be a possibility that the man was backed into a corner. They had no option but to go the way he went. I don't know, this is all new to me, Ken, but I'm trying to get an understanding of what happened, what was the truth. And again, anybody listening, I've go and look at it, Europa, The Last Battle. And not only that, again, I was told to watch it was called Adolf Hitler, the greatest story never told. And from what I seen, I was like, if this is true what they're saying about this guy.
We're really hitting on mind control here because I've been, again, trying to warn people to understand. And also, it requires humility. I believed the narrative that, the majority of people out there believe about World War II. I believe that. I believe that my nation was the greatest. I believed a whole bunch of stuff now that I know is just complete folly. I was an idiot. I have said it publicly. I'll say it again now. I was an idiot. It's not easy to admit when you've been fooled. Not easy.
And that's one thing I want to say. That is the problem with society now. We don't want to admit when we get it wrong.
Right. It takes a real man to be able to
because I got it wrong, Ken.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. And I've used it as motivation because I don't like being an idiot. I don't like that. I don't need to be like, oh, I'm like, oh, I know some. Listen, I'm blessed for what I've learned and what I know and so on and so forth, but I'm a humble man and I aspire always to become better. And I listen to people, even views that I don't agree with, because that's where we learn. If you want an echo chamber, no problem. You'll find it out there. And I also know that if you speak the truth about certain subjects, it's career suicide.
Yeah.
I know this for a fact.
I know for a fact, me talking to you just now, a lot of people are going to sit here and probably judge me, but at the end of the day, I'm sitting here saying, I don't know if this is true, but what I'm saying is, what's happened to me, they've silenced me so many times, you've lied about this, Jag, you continue to still lie about it, so what else have you fucking lied about?
So let me try and put it in a way that as much as they hire trolls, the enemy has trolls. They'll come in, they'll do things like, oh, he lost me with a teardrop tattoo, and that's all they got. That's all they won't deal with what I'm saying because they operate in the area of lies and illusion. Me, I'm a truth teller. And if somebody wants to call me out for being wrong on something, go on then. Let's do it. So they said to you, they said to all of us, first off, that mask. You know what I did when, like, I was in the States for half of COVID, and I was here in this country for half of it. I was in the States for the worst part of it. I can honestly say I drove across the entire country, never wore that mask once, flew internationally, didn't wear that damn mask, that diaper on my face, as I call it. And when they did say something, like going into a shop or whatever, like, oh, do you need a mask? No, thanks. And then they'd say, oh, no, you need a mask. No, I'm allergic to oxygen deprivation. And if they really wanted to try and push it, I would say, listen, I'm a Marine. I've been in a war. I've been exposed to toxic chemicals, biological weapons. I can't, and I won't. My point is, I'll tell you what, you know what you really need? Oxygen. There's several things you can go out without for a while. Like you can go without food. I've gone 30 days without food twice. I've gone 46 days without any food, literally. Even longer than Jesus, to be honest. 46 days, 30 days, 30 days. You can go a long time without food. You can only go days without water. If you have no water, especially if you're sweating, you ain't going to live long. You know what you really can't go without? Air. Oxygen. You'll be dead within minutes. Literally. And that mask, let's just use some critical thinking here for a second. We are meant to exhale, not to re-inhale our exhalation. If this room did not have air ventilation and we sat in here, it would only take a few days before we would die. We would die because when you exhale, that's carbon dioxide. That is not going to deliver oxygen to your blood, and eventually your body will shut down. The effect of putting a mask over your face is inherently unhealthy, and it has caused damage. Just that. Never mind the death jag. The death jag. I used to drive Jaguar, by the way. So when you have this mask, by the way, the only time I wear that mask is when I'm like sanding and there's dust everywhere, and that's the only time I do that. And it's not any other time. When you put that mask over you, what's happening is all the things that you're exhaling out, which, by the way, we exhale out things that our body doesn't want in there. We also get rid of things through exhalation.
Detox.
Yes, we do. So when you breathe out and that air is not allowed to escape, those germs and those things, bacteria and shit, that gets stuck in there. Plus, the flow out is not complete. So what you're doing is re-inhaling your exhalation. And as I've just said, if this room was sealed, literally, like if there was no flow of air coming in here, we're just breathing, and the oxygen is going to get lower and lower and lower, and the two of us would die, literally. This is just basic critical thinking here. So when you're being told, and by the way, that was a mandate. That's not law. That's how I got it. No, you will not fucking order me to put a diaper on my face. I don't care how stupid the rest of humanity is. I'm a free man. You will not fucking tell me to. I gave that shit up in the Marines. I signed away my freedom way back when. No more. When you re-inhale your exhalation, you are causing a lot of problems for yourself. And you are depriving yourself of oxygen as well, because you're not getting a clean flow of oxygen in there. That alone is dangerous and destructive. But then we add to it what you like. I want to ask you, for those that maybe don't know, I want to know, like, what were the symptoms? How long did it take from when you took it? Like, what did you feel? Like, how long did it take?
Literally within like 24 hours.
Within 24 hours?
Yeah, I took it, and then I didn't really feel anything at the time, but then literally the next day, fatigue, it just got worse, and then dizziness, and then from there I just deteriorated, and I had like POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I had seizures. My brain wouldn't work, couldn't sit up.
So you were working at the time, presumably.
Yeah, I was working, yeah, and I was playing golf and stuff, you know. I was just living the life, you know, and yeah. Then I thought, nah, there's something not right here, and then I just started to get worse and worse. I've spoke about it in other podcasts, you know, but POTS is basically a condition where I would stand up and my heart rate would go instantly up to 130, 140, 150 beats per minute, and the blood pressure was going through the roof as well. And I've spoke about this before. One time I stood up and I felt like somebody had grabbed my heart and twisted it 3 times. Wow. And I dropped to the floor. What that is my understanding is that's like myocarditis and POTS. You mix the two of them together, because what myocarditis does, it wants to like restrict the heart. It protects the heart, so it's inflammation around the heart. You put the heart like that, it puts stress on, it's restricting the heart, and it was one of the worst feelings I've ever had.
You know, my dad had heart disease. His father died of heart disease. He died at 52 years old, but I remember him telling me he had 3 heart attacks. The third one did him in. But he told me when he had a heart attack that it felt like an elephant was standing on his chest.
Yeah.
You felt something like that?
Yeah, I've had that before, yeah. I've had that. It's like a snake wrapped around you and it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. It's horrible. I sit here just now and you might look at me and think, oh, he looks okay. I've got neurological issues. I've got like heart issues. You know, I feel like every heartbeat feels like there's a thumb in my heart sometimes. And yeah, I'm just used to it now. I just deal with it, you know. But the I showed you earlier on the picture of me in a wheelchair, and I was literally in bed for like 14 months, you know. And just like you, I was just trying to get an understanding, get answers, you know, what's going on, why is nobody reporting on this, and that's what's led to me on this journey to try and figure out what's going on. But I don't want to make this podcast about me. I do want to touch on Europa and what your views are in World War II, because like I said, we were made to believe that there was a man who was the most evil man in the world. But again, after I watched that documentary, mate, and that movie, I sit and go, who really was the bad guys? Was it us or was it them? Because my understanding is this man didn't want to go to war with Britain. Am I right in saying there was did they not fly over the UK and they dropped flyers saying we don't want to go to war with you? Is that correct?
That's absolutely true, yeah.
I mean, these are things I never knew.
It's absolutely true. And here's a difference between all of our leaders and this man we all know. We don't even need to say his last name, Adolf. We all know who we're talking about. He, funny enough, in my studies, I never set out to come to this conclusion, but I realized, like, you know, the Me Too movement, right? The rape thing, you know, Me Too, Me Too, Me Too. It's ironic. I have a Me Too. As I studied history, which wasn't all exclusively about Adolf, it was just about history, World War II, war in general, something very dear to my heart, having been in a war, having experienced combat, I realized as I went further and further and further, I have over 70 things in common with Adolf. Now, a lot of people will have some of these things in common. Like one man, I get to count one there. I'm a male, so you know half of us have that. You have that. Catholic. I'm a Catholic, so boom, that one too. First Holy Communion Catechism. Yep, done that too. Loving mother. Yep, that one as well. Abusive father. Yep, that one as well. And I can keep going down the list, but I have 70 plus things in common with this man. Vegetarian. Yep, me too. How many German vegetarians, World War heroes do we? Germans aren't exactly known for their vegetarianism, but he was, and I know why. I also have been slandered and libeled. I'm also a great speaker. I am also a guy who despises usury and recognizes it for the crime against humanity that it is. And I've also done a number of other things, which I realize, like, wow, who would have thought? And maybe I'm just as evil as he is, or maybe neither one of us is evil. I'll tell you what he did do. Instead of parroting the stupid lies, the mind-controlled lies, I don't even need to say the lies. We all know the lies. We all know the lies. Well, we all know, okay,
Well,
I'll
not
just say
a lot
gas
of,
chamber,
a
6 million.
a lot of
Let's
people
do that.
watching this won't, and they'll be like, why is John even entertaining this? Because a lot of people will be like, what is he talking about? Like, because I said to, like, I've got people, and I'm starting to hear more people saying this. It's not like, you know, and I'm starting to hear more people starting to say these things, and I'm going, this was, and I was like, they're all fucking nuts. I was like, they're all crazy. But then as time goes on, I start to hear more people, and I'm like, right, there must be more to this. And like I say, I'll go back to it, they've lied about this, so what else have they fucking lied about? So it's like, right, how did we get to this point now where more people are starting to kind of get to this way of talking?
Who controls the media? Who controls Hollywood? Who controls the banks? Who controls our politicians? Who has a disproportionate amount of control? Who can't you criticize? Who can't you criticize? Is it anti-Semitic for me to ask that question? Let me tell some truth about Mr. Evil. Absolute truth. I won't even go into the lies. I'll just tell some truth. That guy had been in a war. He was a decorated war hero. He had the Iron Cross, second class, first class. He was injured 3 times. When he was injured the first time and sent back to the rear with the gear to heal, the moment that he was healed, bam, back to the front. He insisted. Injured a second time in war. World War I, one of the most bloody, nasty wars ever. And that is saying a lot. Second time injured. Serious injury, but he went back, he healed. Bam! As soon as he was done, back to the front. Back to the front. Insisted. Both times he could have stayed back on light duty. Nope. He went back. These are facts. Third time he got injured. Guess how he got injured this time? He got injured by mustard gas, which us good guys were using apparently, which Winston Churchill has acknowledged full well, which would be considered a war crime today. But Adolf Hitler was exposed, not just him, but he was. Mustard gas has a lot of effects. Among them is blindness. He was blinded, sent back in the rear with the gear. And while he was there, recovering, a lot of guys go into depression when they are exposed to mustard gas and they go blind because many of them never got their vision back. You can imagine how you might be a little bit depressed if you're now blind, never going to be able to see your lady or all the things that we take for granted that we can see with our eyes. While he was back, bandaged and blinded, you know, just wanting to recover to go back to the front again, that is when World War I ended, which, without getting deeper, the Germans could have won. If they were as bloodthirsty as us, they could have easily won that war. But anyway, not only did they not win the war, the Kaiser abdicated. Effectively, the sovereignty of the German people and nation was now submitted to the victor. And who was the victor? The victor was those who ultimately are running the world today. Those who give loans at interest, because when you lose a war, guess what happens? You now have to pay reparations. Those reparations, you're bankrupt. You put all your money into the war machine. This is why bankers love war. All of the money that was saddled upon Germany was born out of what's known as the Versailles Treaty. Anybody, including David Irving, one of the great English historians who lost his whole career for telling the truth, If you go to the Versailles Treaty, basically, let's look at the worst examples of African nations that get infrastructure projects with their corrupt politicians, and they're saddled with a debt they can never pay back. It's an old game. That game was done with the Germans. So the Germans, after World War I, it was while Adolf was recovering from the blindness of the mustard gas from the chemical weapons that he was exposed to by us good guys, that he found out that the German Kaiser had abdicated and that the sovereignty of the German people was now gone. And not only that, they were saddled with reparations, and you can't pay it. Your money's gone, so you get a loan. That loan was such an impossible loan, there was no way for the Germans to ever pay it back. Those that took over the country stole the 500 million Deutschmarks worth of gold that was in the vaults. All of that was taken. The entire nation was looted, and it was saddled with a debt courtesy of the Versailles Treaty that basically meant Germany was a destitute. And you know why? Because the British Empire, which was, the sun never sets, right? The British Empire didn't like the potential competition. So the British Empire and the French and, all the good guys, they all the French want their piece of the pie, colonizing Africa and other places. The British want their piece of the pie, which sun never sets. They didn't like a Germany that had a great production capacity and potential to be a really wealthy nation, a good constructive member of European society. So they took all of the wealth through the banksters, saddled it with a debt that was unpayable, and Adolf Hitler was blinded when he found the news that Germany had abdicated. The Kaiser had abdicated in his nation. This is what's known as the Great Stab in the Back, for those that know history. Now, keep in mind that this man watched his brothers die for Germany. He fought for Germany and was willing to die. He did so nobly, honorably, and was decorated, and rightly so. He should have been more than a lance corporal. I was a lance corporal, too. Another thing I have in common. I was an infantryman. He was, too. I fought in a war. I did. Boom, 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 boom. So it was that was the seminal moment. Similar to me. My Marine Corps moment was my red pill. And that was where Adolf realized that the guys on the ground who fought, they were stabbed in the back. The nation was completely betrayed. And the debt that became the Weimar German Republic was run now by what Henry Ford called the international Jew, literally. And this is where Germany, from the end of World War I, leading up to the election which brought Adolf Hitler into power, by the time he came to power, I'll get to that, and once I'll tell you what the state of Germany was at that point, with the banksters and the cohorts of the British and the French and all the rest. They were completely bankrupted. When Adolf Hitler came out of World War I, he was beginning to show the qualities which, again, I kind of share too. Like, I've been anti-war and pro-law ever since for 30 plus years, and he ended up becoming recognized as a great contributor to the cause of the German people, which communism was a big thing back then, which of course is fostered and created by the Jews. And so communism was one of the options they had. Adolf was adamantly opposed to that, and he became part of the National Socialist Party, the NDSAP. And at that time, it had nobody. Like, it was basically nobody. But because of his leadership and because of his credentials, it became bigger. When he then conducted a march in Munich with people behind him and they got shot at, he was then put on trial for treason. And it was at that trial where he gave speeches that just everybody, the whole courtroom and even the judges were like, wow, this guy is something else. Like, you really can't argue like this guy really cares about this nation and he's really exposing the problem, the enemy inside the gate. And so he was sent to prison for treason, where he could have been executed, but instead he had enough support where they kept him in for so long. That's where he wrote a book called Mein Kampf, and Rudolf Hess translated that. Now, I've read Mein Kampf. Most people have heard of that book, but they ain't going to take the time to read. I've read it. I know what he said. And the Jews knew what he said. And that's why he wrote that book in 1925, Fast forward 8 years later, he's now the leader of the National Socialist Party, and he's got enough support to whereby he is elected the most popularly democratically elected leader in all of Europe in 1933.
How did he? Because, like I said, I was watching this Europa and that, and again, it's like, why was this guy such a big threat? Why was he such a big threat? Is it because, is it true what this man done was he took his country out of poverty? He got people
that's what
jobs,
I'm leading to.
houses.
That's what I'm leading to. I mean, first off, they knew if they read Mein Kampf. This is like the most censored book, banned book in the world over the decades. They don't want you reading that book. Right now, they're doing. I know the guy who's taking Hitler's speeches and making it into English. They don't want you to hear what he said.
Yeah,
no, they don't.
That's another thing as well.
They don't want you to hear that.
Because back in the day, I don't speak German. I just assume what the TV tells us.
Yeah, you think he's saying this madman's. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's saying the most beautiful things. You will never hear Keir Starmer say even anything remotely close. You wish Keir Starmer or your leader would say the things he said. But anyway, when he had this tremendous support and he ran, he was the most popularly democratically elected leader in all of Europe. Winston Churchill was not elected. Keir Starmer wasn't. Rishi Sunak. Anyway. So 1933, for those that are listening, go on, Google it right now. 1933, Judea declares war on Germany. 14 million Jews of the world unite, calling for the destruction of Germany. Sounds kind of like the Jewish state of Israel calling for the destruction and genociding the Palestinians. Yeah. Judea declares war on Germany. 14 million Jews of the world unite, calling for the destruction of Germany. I don't have the book here. I sent it off to Malaysia. It's called Germany Must Perish by Kaufman. In that book, he not only calls for the absolute destruction of Germany, it's similar to Palestine today. Everything. Wipe it off the earth. Every last man, woman, and child. So think about this. This is absolutely true. Whatever anyone wants to say about Adolf Hitler, could he have possibly committed any crimes when he's only just won a democratic election? At that point now, no one could dispute he couldn't have possibly committed any crime. Maybe he said things you don't like, but he was still popularly democratically elected, wasn't he? But why did Judea declare war on him? Because they read Mein Kampf. They knew that this man was a war hero. They knew that this man was against war and didn't want war. Who loves war more than anybody else? Who wins in war? Bankers. That's the only winner in war. The only winner in war. Even if you win the war, you don't win the war. You come back so damaged, and the losses are so big. But bankers, they make money on the front end, they make money on the game, they make money on the loans and the reconstruction, they make money the whole way through. They knew that he wanted to end war. This is where he offered so many peace offerings. So when he took power, we look at Russia today, we look at Iran, right? Sanctions against the sanctions against Germany, because Judea had tremendous power back then. The sanctions against Germany would not allow for all sorts of raw materials to get in, things that Germany doesn't have, like rubber, as an example. So tires. They made tires in Germany without rubber because they couldn't get rubber. Those tires ended up being better than the rubber tires. All of the things that they were cut off from would have been crippling if they didn't have such a noble leader as this man. Here's the situation that he inherited. Look at America today. It's a bloody mess. This country's a bloody... No, that's nothing. In Germany in 1933, crime was off the charts. Berlin was the moral cesspool capital of the world. Bestiality, homosexuality, the transgender movement, that was all this Frankfurt School. All of that shit was initiated by Jewish agents that were the first ones to create this transgender agenda that we've all adopted today. This is the state of Germany that he inherited. So, your nation is bankrupt. It has a debt it can't pay back. Crime is off the charts. Pedophilia, bestiality, transgenderism, homosexuality. Berlin was better than Bangkok if you're a pervert. Literally. There were 6 million unemployed. And keep in mind, 1929 is the bankers' crash. That's the Great Depression. So it wasn't just Germany. Germany's situation was even worse. Millions starved in the post-1929 crash. Fact. Look at it for those who want to know real history. So 6 million unemployed, 2 million homeless, no money, no jobs, millions of Germans starving. Your country is a cesspit. And the Jews were doing well, sipping champagne and eating caviar while the German people were dying in mass. He took that nation within 3-4 years. Every single German was now employed. The highest wages in the world. The highest standard of living in the world. The 2 million homeless, all of them housed. 6 weeks mandatory vacation for the entire family on cruise ships that weren't allowed into England because the English corrupt leaders did not want them to see how the Germans were doing. Hell no. You don't want the British people to know what National Socialism really is. He fixed every single problem. He made laws to protect animals. He outlawed vivisection, animal experiment. He outlawed that. He outlawed kosher and halal slaughter, which is not a good way to kill animals. He outlawed all of these things. He protected the environment. The laws to protect animals and the environment are stronger than any laws that you'll find in any of our nations to this day. Facts. All facts. He also protected the family, the traditional family. Big time. If you wanted a home in Germany, here's how you get a home in Germany. This is how much he loved the family, including the mother. If you wanted a home, he outlawed usury. He arrested 5 Rothschilds. 5. No other head of state has ever done that. 5 Rothschilds. He outlawed Freemasonry and secret societies. John F. Kennedy talked about that in his famous speech. Woodrow Wilson talked about it. Small group of men running the nation. Mm-hmm. He outlawed all that. Yep. Fact. I defy anyone. You go on with your mind control programming. Everything I'm saying is dead right. And if you wanted a home, you could get a loan. No usury. All you had to do to get a home, a German standard home. We're not talking about a shanty town here. We're talking German standard homes. Homes that are still there to this day. Literally, 76 years later. There. Standing good. Sound. Better than British homes, many of them. If you wanted a home, here's what you had to do. A man and a woman. Sorry, if you're gay, that's not going to work. You're going to have to be a man and a woman. You get married, you get a loan. You get a loan without interest, and it will build you a home, a German standard home, 1 acre plot. But you have to have a half acre of that needs to be used for gardening and farming so that you can produce food, so that Germany could be food independent. What are they doing to the farmers today here in England and Europe?
It's a big worry that I say to people all the time. I've been saying this to people. You need to get your finger out your holes and you need to get an understanding of what's happening to the farmers right now, because these farmers, their land's getting bought up, that they can't afford it. There's the weather's not good. They're not getting this. They're not being able to produce food.
They're destroying the small farmers, and Bill Gates owns more agricultural land in America than anyone.
Yeah.
So you had to grow food with your half your acre, and this loan was such that less than 30% of the one single family income. So the man went to work. His salary was sufficient to whereby only 30% or less of what he earned. We're not talking like the high. No, we're talking about the average German was 30% or less of a single family income. No need for both of you to work. Nuh-uh. Because the mom's job is to raise the children. So the man went off to work, building the Autobahn, building the Volkswagen Beetle, the greatest car ever made, which he took the example of Henry Ford. He made it affordable for transport in a way that did not exist in other places. Most people could not afford cars at that time. He made it affordable for everyone. So you get married, You get a loan to build the home, and you get an acre plot. That's your home now. You wanna be able to erase the loan. Have a kid. 30% of your income from a male, single family, would be able to pay for that home. Now you make a baby, 25% of that loan is now wiped out. Oh, but you'd like to save more, would you? Have a second kid. 50% of your non-usury loan is now gone. Oh, but you'd like to save more. 3 kids, 75% gone. Oh, but you'd like to have no mortgage. 4 kids. 4 kids. He's evil, isn't he? What a bastard he is, isn't he? What a bastard Adolf Hitler was, yeah.
And did they not used to give, again, I'm only going by what I've seen, but did they not used to give women a cross if they had so many children?
Well, I have it. It's here, and
yeah,
there it is right there. This was awarded.
The thing is, like I said to you, we were out earlier on when I met you, and you pulled that out, and you showed me a book, and I'm sitting there going, that even I feel awkward to hold this and look at this, because I've been made, again, I can't 100% this is all true. I'm just trying to get an understanding of what's going on, and I'm very interested to know these things. And like I say, I just feel that everything I've now been told has been a lie, because they're lying to me now. They're continuing to lie. We can all see, I mean, if people don't think that, okay, this didn't happen, well, for the people that are standing up right now, they're all getting called far fucking right anyway.
You know what's going to happen? Watch. The trolls, I'm telling you, I'm going to educate all of you. You can reject what I have to say, but I challenge all of you to go look for yourself at the real history. See if anything. Call me wrong. What your trolls are going to do, because they have Hasbara trolls that are paid from Tel Aviv to come out and lie and basically sling mud. What they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, tattoos, this, that, and the other. They're going to call me names, and they're going to say this, that, and the other. They're going to call you names and say, how dare you have this guy on, all this stuff. Yeah. You know what they won't do? They won't give you any factual retort to what I'm saying. Everything I'm saying is true. Is the truth anti-Semitic? Maybe it is, huh?
It's only up to you, mate. Like I said, I'm only here to listen, and again, I can't argue both sides, because the history I was told. I think one of the ones that I was told when I was younger was that Hitler attacked his own building so he could go to war with us. Is that not one that they tell us?
Yeah, the Reichstag, the burning of the Reichstag.
He attacked his own building to... Yeah. It was him that wanted to go to war with us, but what you're telling me is that's complete opposite. It sounds like this man had his country in order. He was breaking away from the system. I mean, you told me that he arrested Rothschilds, is that correct?
Five.
How did he do that?
He knew. There's so much more that I could tell.
I know, we could be here for days.
The Night of Long Knives. After he came into power, here's another little detail. They knew this was, the jig is up, man. This guy's going to end our game here. We're making out like bandits, looting and raping Germany. And so they conspired when he came to power. When he first came to power, this is an important point about him being a, quote, dictator, right? He he got the majority vote of the election, but not an absolute majority. So he had to be part of a coalition government. So similar to the system we have in Western countries, many of them. But he had to share power with the enemy inside the gate, the traitors. The ones that I say should be tried for treason and according to U.S. law should be hung if they are lawfully convicted. That's a capital offense. If you aid and abet the enemies of the state and sell off the resources that is the birthright of the people of the state, and you're convicted of treason, you should be hung as far as I'm concerned. That's not me calling for violence, that's justice. If you're a pedophile and you're known to have raped children, as far as I'm concerned, you should be killed. And if I have my way, your dick and balls are going to be taken off before you go as well. You're going to be made an example of. You want to touch our children and violate them? We can normalize that shit all you want. I'm not down with that program. You do certain things, you deserve to die. But I never want anyone to be unlawfully or unjustly convicted. I am not for vengeance. This is part of why they have a problem with me. I'm not saying revolution. I'm not saying go get the... No, I'm saying law. The law. What we have is the color of law. Posing is law. Acts of Parliament are not law when they subvert or injure the Bill of Rights, born of Magna Carta, which the whole point of Magna Carta was to end usury. There are so many times in English history where Jews were not allowed in this country because the same pattern has been played out over and over. Once they get their grubby mitts on your country and bring usury in, which for all the Christians out there and Muslims, I'm calling you out. Why are we involving ourselves or indulging in or profiting from usury, lending money at interest? Jesus didn't like that stuff. Adolf didn't like that stuff. Gaddafi didn't like that stuff. JFK didn't like that stuff. I don't like that stuff. In fact, I consider that unacceptable. He ended all that stuff. He took Germany. There are copious amounts of British and other foreign diplomats who traveled, including JFK, who was a journalist. He traveled to Germany under Adolf's rule. And British diplomats traveled there. And you know what they said? They had never seen a more happy people. They loved their leader. How many British people love Keir Starmer? Or Rishi Sunak? Or any of them? How about Tony Blair? How about any of them? So were they all just stupid, mind-controlled idiots who bought into a madman's rantings?
So this is another thing as well, because I was, you go online and stuff, and I'm doing this. I was online. I can't remember what it was, but there was a guy in one of these rooms. I think it's like online poker or something like that. And I'm talking to the guy, and I said, because I'd been hearing this stuff, and I went, do you know what? I'll ask someone from Germany about this stuff. But he was against the narrative, what you're saying. He was sitting saying, no, that was terrible back in the day, what we done, and we had to educate ourselves, re-educate ourselves and all this. Mm-hmm. That's a German citizen saying that. I don't know how old he was, he was maybe 30 years of age. But again, why have I not seen lots of Germans coming out and talking this way?
The truth needs no laws to protect it. Lies do. Where's free speech? Why is free speech? We don't have free speech. Yeah. Even now. Why can't we put this out on YouTube or JuTube, as I call it? Why? Because free speech is nearly dead. And when we get to full communism, do you know what the first law of communism was? Communism was created, by the way, by a guy known as Karl Marx. If you go to London right now, and you'll see posters glorifying Karl Marx. His real name is Moses Mordecai Levy. He's descended from a long line of Talmudic Jews. Within the Talmud, it says that we're all goyim, that we're all meant to be slaves for the chosen ones. It also says that Mother Mary is a whore. It says that Jesus is boiling in hot excrement in hell. And it also says that they can rape our children, and that's perfectly okay, that they can lie, steal, and take advantage and ultimately enslave us all. That's in their holy book. But all we hear about is the Quran. Am I making up a lie here? Is the truth anti-Semitic? Am I making up this stuff? Is this stuff not in the Talmud? Dan Bilzerian, by the way, a good friend of mine, he's been banging on this drum, and he's done it recently as well. God bless him. Takes some balls to do this, but nonetheless, truth is truth, man. Truth is God, and God is truth. These truths are real. And the reason why they need to pass laws, fake-ass laws, to try and subvert the speaking of the truth is because only the truth will set us free. If we continue to parrot the mind-controlled, indoctrinated lies, we will enslave our children. And for that reason, I hope more people take on the responsibility and duty, especially so-called men. If you think by being popular and just parroting the lies that you've been told and voting for the lesser of two evils in these sham so-called elections like we see in America, you are enslaving your children. Flat out, I'd rather die than play that game. No way.
Do you see a lot of similarities to what you're saying, to what happened back then, to what's happening now? Do you see a lot? Because what you're saying to me, I'm like, this sounds very similar,
There is an awakening happening right now, and part of it is COVID.
100%.
A big part, because a lot of people, I'm sure you've thought about this. Imagine being the one like you. You believed that this was correct. You were wrong. I'll put it bluntly, like I've said about you were an idiot. So was I. I'm sorry for you, brother. No, and I prayed for you. I literally said a prayer. I'm praying for you, and I wish you all the best. And I don't underestimate God's ability to perform a miracle for you to have a full recovery. But let's be honest, man. We've been idiots. We have. You need to be humble and accept it, and then do our best to not be stupid no more.
Yeah.
For the benefit of our children and future generations, we have to do this. There is an awakening happening right now. I've been saying this over and over. I've said it to you earlier today. The positive side of genocide. That sounds like a crazy thing to say, but this genocide we see being practiced in Gaza, this openly declared genocide, this human animals, Amalek, even Keir Starmer literally saying on record, when he was asked, does Israel have the right to cut off the water, the food, the electricity? He literally doubled down and said, yes. He said, yes, Israel has the right to defend. So wait, I'm sorry. Cutting off the water, the food, and the electricity in a now starving population that has no safe passage anywhere, nowhere. All of us pathetic, weak, servile people who are sitting back here in our countries paying taxes, you're going to have hell to pay, man. If you believe in God, man, you better start looking seriously at these things. If you want to just go ahead and be offended by what I say, sling some mud my way, sling mud over your way, that shit ain't going to buy you nothing when you meet your maker. Nothing. It's going to buy you hell is what it's going to buy.
Is it true that again, like I said, I'm just trying to ask questions. I'm trying to, I mean, they talk about the great Winston Churchill and stuff. I'm sure you've got views on him, but is it true that according to the Europa and that he offered, like, I think it was a peace. He was like, I don't want to go to war like 13 times. I said, like, people need to realise that how much the mainstream media can manipulate you. They can't. People still do believe it to this point, this day. You know, they think that a young person dropping down a football field is normal.
Rudolf Hess flew over here. People don't know that. He flew over because Rudolf was like Adolf. He's the guy who transcribed in the prison Mein Kampf. This is how loyal.
That's his right-hand man?
Rudolf Hess, his right-hand man, was sent on a mission. He flew, because he was a pilot, he flew over here to England. He landed up in the north, and he had a message. This is how desperate they were to avoid a war. Actually, Adolf Hitler had no hatred towards the British people at all. He actually deeply admired the British people, more than the French. I think we all have a little bit of a problem with the French. Anyway, the bottom line is, he didn't want war with the French either. You know who he wanted to fight? The communists. That's who he wanted to fight. And you know what happened? Here's some facts about us being the good guys, right? Here's some facts. Who in the audience would like to dismiss the fact or deny the fact that America, for all of its hypocrisy, would be considered a Christian nation? I used to say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I said an oath, so help me God. Is that a Muslim God? Is that a Hindu God? No, it's a Christian God. That is who America is. Regardless of the genocides and the hypocrisies, we are a Christian nation. England, what is it, a Hindu? Muslim? I'm sorry, it's historically a Christian nation. Our leaders supposedly claim to be Christians. Okay, so we've got two Christian nations. By the way, Germany was also Christian, for whatever that's worth. But we made allies with a guy named Joe Stalin, a communist Soviet Union Joe Stalin. For those that want to know history, why don't you look at Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a survivor of the Bolshevik so-called revolution and of the death of Christianity in Christian Russia under the Tsar. They'll tell you a bunch of stuff about them, whatever. Used to be a Christian nation as well. The Christian nation it didn't have a revolution. Alexander Solzhenitsyn says this. It was not a revolution. It was an invasion. The invasion of Christian Russia was financed by the Jewish bankers. The equivalent of $500 million worth of gold was taken, courtesy of the bankers who stole all the gold, over there, and they financed the mercenaries that invaded Russia, and their duty was to kill all of the Christians. They destroyed and burned all of the churches and mosques. They killed all the Christians. They replaced Christian Russia after murdering the family. They replaced that with communism. Communism was created by the Jews, by Moses Mordecai Levy, a.k.a. Karl Marx. Theodor Herzl, the creator of Zionism, was right there with him when they created this thing. So that's Zionism. That's communism. Born of Judaism. Facts. These are facts. Am I being anti-Semitic? Well, it's true. So, Christian Russia was replaced by a communist, and the birthright or the birth of Zionist Bolshevik reality. 500 million, the equivalent today, by the way, $500 million worth of gold back then. That's like hundreds of billions now, literally. So they had that kind of money to pay all like the French Foreign Legion, whatever mercenary you want, pay them to go, and their duty was to go slaughter all of them. Once they did the job, killed all the Christians, they replaced that with communism. Gulags, the Gulag system was born, and atrocities beyond what you can. If you want to go to the darkest period of history, go to the Bolshevik so-called revolution. Go to that. Seriously. I could list tortures that were done there that are like, whoa. Even for today, like, whoa. In fact, the tortures we see going on, like the red-hot metal rods that are being stuck up the rectums of Palestinian prisoners while they're being raped, that's the kind of stuff the Bolsheviks were doing. In fact, it's the Bolsheviks who are over there in Palestine right now. It's these people. They serve Satan. They're that evil. I mean, can you imagine, even if you really hated the enemy, do you really think you'd be taking a red-hot metal rod and sticking up the ass of your enemy? Or would you just kill him? You know, maybe a few bit of hurt first, but really, would you go that far? How about cutting open the stomach and pulling out the intestine, nailing that to a tree, and then whipping the victim to go around the tree to where the intestines wrap until it pulls out an absolutely miserable death? How about gang raping women? We're not talking 5, 10, we're talking hundreds. Gang rape. We're talking poking out eyes. This is what happened to the Christian Russian nation. It was replaced by communism/Soviet Union. And we, Christian America, Christian England, allied with Joseph Stalin, murderer of 70 plus million people, according to Alexander Solzhenitsyn, so that we could fight Mr. Evil, Adolf Hitler. Okay, yeah. And what happened when we won the Great War? Communism, which Adolf was trying and nearly got. When he went on Operation Barbarossa, sadly the winter beat them and they nearly got to Moscow. If they could have taken Moscow, they would have ended communism right then. But hey, what happened when we won the Great War? Communism came all the way into Europe up to East Berlin. If it weren't for Adolf, communism would have come and swept through France, swept through Spain, and almost surely would have come into Britain. Adolf Hitler saved France, Europe from communism. It was because of the Germans that it only managed to get to East Berlin. And it took up until the 80s for that wall to finally come down. And if people love communism, boy, I wish you could have gone back to the Gulag system in East Berlin and whatnot. I'd love for you to go back there. I wish you could go back in time so you could go love on communism.
This is I mean, for me, I'm like, whoa, this is like, I say, mate, I'm just a guy who's trying to figure out what the fuck's going on, and if this is all factual and truth, like I say, people go and look at it, like I say, you're only speaking, like I said, I've watched this stuff, and I've only got questions, and I'm going, wow. And again, we're told that obviously the Germans lost and we won the war.
We won the Great War, yeah.
Is that true, or is that
Judea? Remember this now.
Because the thing is as
remember, Judea declares war on Germany. 14 million Jews of the world unite, calling for the destruction of Germany. Britain didn't win the war. America didn't win the war. Judea won the war.
Is it true that if he did get in power and he did take over the war and he did win, that people like me, be speaking German?
He
right
wanted
now?
National Socialism for the Brits. Now, let me encapsulate what National Socialism is. They call it Nazi, by the way. That term is created by the Jews. Nazi. And now I'll get into that in a minute. But what here's what National Socialism is. I've already told you the policies of, free home and family and, job and high standard of living and high standard of living, highest wages, 6 weeks mandatory vacation paid. I've told you all those things. Here is, imagine this today for all those white nationalists out there, the BMP and all you. Some of you are smart, but most of you idiots, whatever. Here's the policy. In Germany, by the way, there were no classes. A lot of people, this is how flawed our thinking is, how little we critically think. We long for the days of the middle class, don't we? We want like a healthy middle class. Here's the problem with that. If you're in the middle class, I guess it's okay for you, but you wouldn't want to be in the lower class, would you? No, you wouldn't want to be there. You'd either want to be in the upper class or the middle class, but you wouldn't want to be the white niggers of Europe, the Irish, the ones who built London and much of the world. We were slaves. We were treated like slaves. So that's the lower class. You wouldn't want to be there. Anyway, in Germany, there was no middle class, upper class, lower class. You know what there was? Germans. Guess who qualified as a German? Not the immigrant. Are you born and raised in Germany? Do you have German blood? If you do, you're German. Not first class, no, German. That's all there was. So those who didn't come from Germany, similar to like Palestine, do those people who are claiming this so-called Jewish state, do they come from? No, they don't. That's why they've outlawed DNA testing over there. They don't come from Palestine. You're a foreigner. You're an invader. So Adolf, Mr. Evil, wouldn't that be terrible if the leaders of this country, or say Ireland, or Europe as a whole, shut down the borders, cut all immigration that's illegal out now. Stop. Shut the borders. Stop the immigration, which is being brought on by, we're so nice now. He cut that out. This is the concentration camps. We've all heard about that. They were not extermination camps. Auschwitz, as an example, it had a pool. It had a theater. It even had a brothel. They had their own money, and they were not exterminated. There were no gas chambers. There were gas chambers. That was to delouse. You know what they were all dying from? Was diseases that were being passed on by ticks and lice. That's why they shaved their heads. Same as me as a Marine. Do you know why we shave our heads? Because if you got hair up there, that's a perfect little home for lice, ticks, fleas, parasites. You cut that stuff off. Why did they take their clothes and give them new clothes? To remove any of the lice. Those things were put in gas chambers to kill any of the lice and ticks, to protect those who were there. They were given meals. They were given entertainment. They were protected. And in fact, those who lived in the concentration camps were actually safer than you were in Berlin or Hamburg or Dresden or any of these places we firebombed to hell. The immigrants that were there illegally, or the communists allied with the Soviet Union, and the gypsies, and those that had no blood ties and very provably were not friendly to the purposes of the German people nor nation, those were the ones that were put in the concentration camp. The objective was not to kill them. The objective was to deport them back to wherever they came from. That was the objective. For all you British white nationalists out there, go ahead and hate on that. And ultimately, National Socialism was those of you that come from this life, so like England, you're English, you're provably English. This would obviously include now people of Pakistani origin. Now, we've been so multiculturalized that it includes. We're not all white Saxon, Celt, Nords anymore. It used to be, not anymore, because we're all multicultural. So, British people, you're a British citizen, born and raised, or you came here legally and immigrated here legally. So, you are a British citizen. Here is what National Socialism ensures for you. The territory of England, that is your land. That is your territory. It is sovereign, and you get to choose the government of your own choosing to represent your culture, your values. That's one element of National Socialism. The resources, whatever resources you may have, agricultural resources, maybe you have minerals, maybe you have oil, maybe you have this, that, or the other, that is your birthright. That is your birthright. That is the right, and that is for the people. The land, that's only for Germans. You cannot sell the land to foreigners. That's National Socialism. So let people hate on that too. Wouldn't that be horrible if we did that? That would suck, wouldn't it?
I mean, it really is going against the grain, isn't it? It really is going against the narrative, what you're saying. Like I said, mate, I'm just a guy who's curious. I'm not sitting here agreeing or whatever. I'm just sitting going, I've said it multiple times.
Well, the term Nazi was created by the Jews, and it's basically what it means. It's a derogatory term. Like I've used, the bad words already now. Nigger, right? It's like that. Like, by the way, for me, nigger, it does not denote black. A nigger is a nigger, like a piece of shit. You could call him whatever, any number of swear words, just a piece of shit. Nazi is basically that. It effectively means...
You're not calling them that, are you? Just out of curiosity when you said that N-word.
Yeah, no, I mean, the bottom line is I'm a white nigger, so, I embrace it. Words don't hurt me. They don't hurt me. We give power to words. If people want to be so easily offended, this is part of the whole control, isn't it? Oh, we don't want to offend... Maybe you do need to offend somebody. If your thinking is so ridiculously flawed or you want to play victim, shut the hell up. I'm Irish. So I already said this earlier, like, black folk, Indians, like my country, bury my heart at Wounded Knee. We genocided the hell out of a whole bunch of people that helped us when we first got to that land. Anyway, the bottom line is the policies of National Socialism, which they call Nazi. Nazi is a derogatory term created by the Jews that effectively means like imbecile. It's an insult. But everybody says that word. It disgusts me. And now they're comparing the Israelis to so-called Nazis, and I see this everywhere. Shame on all of you playing that game. Really bearing false witness, lying to the people, pretending to be a harbinger of wisdom, of truth. You're lying, pathetic, sick. Don't you dare compare the National Socialist Germans who had more honor and integrity than you and compare them to the Jewish state of Israel, which is genociding my people. Shame on you. Disgusts me. In fact, I had to shut up about Palestine for a while because I kept seeing this. It was like, it made me so sick. I found myself having to sit here and say, this is bullshit. Don't you dare. And by the way, for those that want to study history, look at the British and the Americans, the soldiers, the ones on the ground, who fought the Germans, who were often POWs of the Germans. Look at what they say. This was the most moral army in the world, the most multicultural. Here's some more facts for you. The German military was the most multicultural army in the world. They had a black battalion. By the way, you ever hear of a guy named Jesse Owens?
No, man.
He won 4 gold medals. He's a black athlete, and he won 4 gold medals. At the time, this was like 4 gold medals. That's crazy. He's a black athlete from America. So he was part of the American Olympic team, and he went to the Olympics in 1936, which guess where they were held? In Germany. There was a leader in Germany in 1936 who was there when Jesse Owens won his gold medals. His name is Adolf Hitler. If you look up what Jesse Owens had to say. All of the black athletes were told how this is when the lies, like, we used to call the Iraqis like sand niggers and towel heads and shit like this. You dehumanize the enemy to make it easy for us to kill them and treat them like animals, right? So all the black athletes were told how horrendous the Germans are and how this, that, and the other. And so they were expecting that. Boy, were they in for a surprise. When the black athletes traveled to Germany for the 1936 Olympics held in Berlin, they were treated with absolute respect. They got more love and respect, generosity, and if you go read what they said, go look at what they said. They were treated beautifully. They were treated so well that it made what they were getting treated like back in America look like a nightmare. They were treated so much better in Germany than they ever were in America that it even goes to Jesse Owens. When Jesse Owens won these 4 gold medals and he was doing a victory lap, Adolf Hitler stood up and bowed to a black man. He gave Jesse Owens more respect than he ever got back home in America. Us good guys. Jesse Owens was never invited to the White House. He died poor, destitute. He died as what he was at that time. I'm going to put it bluntly, a nigger who gave America a great way to be, rah, rah, we're all happy, but you treated that black man with no respect at all. And he died impoverished, disrespected, like a piece of shit. He got more respect from Adolf Hitler. Facts, all facts. So if you control the media, you control Hollywood, you control the politicians, and you can get all these bastards to repeat the lie over and over. You tell a lie over and over, it becomes real. This is the world we're living in.
It's like I said, mate, my eyes are completely open, you know. They can manipulate history, they can manipulate whatever. Let's go back to 10 years from now, COVID, vaccines. You know, some people still want to believe it, and I'm like... And then they're starting to, more and more people are starting to come this way. I'm seeing more people talking this way. Yeah. I'm waiting to see if there's German people out there that will speak this way, because it is interesting, and honestly we could speak for hours.
I don't say this, by the way. I'm not trying to like. I care, man. I care. I mean, it's the basis of my vegetarianism. It was the basis even of my foolishness as a Marine. You know, I cared about my nation. I thought I was protecting it. If I didn't care, I wouldn't say these things, and I wouldn't make the sacrifices I do and do the things I do just so I could be the guy who's smarter than everybody else. I'm not. There's a lot of people
again,
out there.
it goes to show you, like, when people speak against the narrative, I mean, there's example as well, when you've got doctors that speak out against COVID or the Jags, you know, they get shut down. So it really goes to show you when people speak out on the truth or speak out on what, you know, what we think
right?
it is.
John
O'Looney.
I mean, what an amazing man, and what he did there was absolutely incredible. I mean, you know, God bless him and all the truth tellers. They don't get rewarded, you know.
Like I say, John O'Looney's been pulling out these clots and that, but I mean, like I said, one of the things that made me, and I mean, people might say what they want what I'm going to say, but I do believe that 9/11 was an inside job. I'm going to use common sense, guys. You know, if you've got 2 big buildings there, if I drove a big massive bus into that building and a massive bus into the buildings are not going to fall down the same way. And not only that, there's a third building that fell and nothing even hit it. I'm going to use common sense.
You know, I was dear friends with a man. He's passed on. His name is Rudy Dent. People can Google him, Rudy Dent. Rudy Dent was a black man born in American. And he fought in Vietnam. He ended up being the captain of a helicopter gunship, and he saw, you know, what we were doing over there. He did not like it at all. He came out of that still loving America, but knowing the crimes of America. So he kind of got what I got. Like I've seen war from the inside. It's not this glorious thing at all. It's really, really ugly. You wouldn't want your kids to go to a war. You'd really want to avoid that at all costs, as Adolf wanted. But he became a policeman after he got out of the military in New York. He's from New York. And then he became a fireman, and he was so highly decorated and credentialed that he ended up becoming the highest fire chief investigator. On the day of 9/11, he reported. Keep in mind now, firemen, they're like, when you work in a job, you have your colleagues, right? You may be friends, and you may even have barbecues together, whatever, but firemen are a different breed. They're the ones that go into buildings, never leave a man behind. That's one of the Marine Corps principles. You don't leave your brother in there. If your brother is still in that burning building, you go back into that burning building, you pull your brother out. They're like family, right? On that day, 44 firemen died that day. He was the chief, right? So it's different as well. When you're a leader, like I'm a captain as well. If I fail in some way and my ship goes down, the captain always goes down with the ship. If you lose your crew members because of anything that you did wrong, that's going to hurt more than anything else. And he didn't do anything wrong. To the contrary, what he did was famously, people can go back. They've tried to scrub all this kind of stuff from the internet. But when he, a few days after 9/11, he did an interview, I believe it was with CNN, and he said, flat out, he heard the explosions in the buildings. There's no way that those buildings came down in the way that we're told. And he lost 444 of his brothers. So this is not the kind of thing that you could just say, oh, well, you know, I know. No. Are you going to shame yourself and turn your back on your brothers who gave up their lives? And they saved many lives. Many, many lives were saved by the firemen that day. And he said flat out that he heard the explosions in the buildings. He said, no way did those things come down. I knew Rudy Den. He was a dear friend of mine. I stayed at his home when he was still living in New York. Eventually, where he lived in New York was a cul-de-sac. And when he moved there, it was just a normal neighborhood. But little by little, Jews ended up buying every single property around him so that he was the last guy. He was going to the city council meetings and he was speaking truth. He was continuing all this. He was being targeted. Eventually, his health failed because he breathed in all that toxic smoke. All that dust and everything, that's asbestos, chemicals, tons, more firemen and more people died from respiratory diseases diseases because of the stuff they inhaled in that day. I stayed with him, and he and I were very, very close. Every time we talked, it was like we talked for hours, and his wife would have to pull him away because his health was failing, and eventually he died younger than he should have because of this. But he is a hero, and he never turned his back on his brothers, and he spoke the truth about what happened to them. Those buildings, the first thing, when you have a crime scene, this is basic crime scene investigation. This is the biggest criminal act in the history of American experience. It took years before an actual investigation was made. They wanted to appoint Henry Kissinger to be the head of this investigation, and that, to the credit of the American people, as dumbed down as they were, like, no frickin' way are you putting Henry Kissinger on this. And eventually they did some sham investigation, which issued the 9/11 Commission report. It's an absolute whitewash. It's a lie. It's absolute shite. It doesn't mention Building 7. It does not mention Building 7 at all. It totally omits that. So let's listen to the official. Here's the official story of 9/11. But the main question whenever you have a crime scene is, who benefits? That's the first question you would ask. Who would have a motive? And you seal off the crime scene. You need to find the forensic evidence, like, to be able to identify who's responsible. How was it conducted? 9/11, here's the official story. 19 hijackers, wielding box cutters, who were headed by a man in Afghanistan who was on dialysis and was in a CIA hospital in July of 2001, masterminded this incredible operation where they managed to hijack 4 planes. This is the official version. With those 4 planes, they supposedly hit the Pentagon, they hit the Twin Towers, and they also had a plane that we have the heroic, American heroes who apparently made the plane go down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. With 2 planes, they took 3 buildings out, and the other plane in Shanksville, it landed on the ground, and we find no fuselage, no jet engines, no bodies, no seats, no nothing.
No black
we see
box.
a hole in the ground, but apparently that's where the plane went down. We also are told that a passenger jet, managed to do a 270-degree banking descending turn, managed to perfectly hit the Pentagon, which was the accounting department. The day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld came out on a press release and said that $2.3 trillion was unaccounted for. And that jet apparently hit that, which destroyed any records of the accounting. Building 7, which wasn't hit by a plane, which fell into its own footprint, that was where all of the records for the SEC, the banking fraudsters, and all this stuff, and also CIA documents, like the secret documents, the redacted stuff we're not allowed to see, that was all destroyed there. Frank Lowy and Larry Silverstein bought the Twin Towers just a month and a half before these buildings went down. Now, let's understand this. You have two Jewish billionaires, Frank Lowy and Larry Silverstein, directly connected to Mossad, which is Israeli intelligence, which has a motto, by way of deception thou shalt do war. That's their motto. Directly connected to Mossad. Those two Jewish billionaires bought two buildings. Now, the interesting thing about those buildings is that the Twin Towers at that time, they were half empty, they were losing money, and the Port Authority, which was New York Port Authority, which was run by Jewish interests, was in a lawsuit trying to absolve itself of the liability because those buildings were full of asbestos. The asbestos is cancerous, and there was already a lawsuit, a case filed in which the claimants won because they were able to prove that cancers were occurring by being in those buildings, and the cancer killed them, and that case was already won, which meant that's the precedent now. Anybody in those buildings who would have been in those buildings for any length of time would have also had a claim, especially if they had any cancer that would have been directly connected to the asbestos that they breathed into their lungs. Two Jewish billionaires buy these two worthless, half-empty buildings a month and a half before 9/11. And the cost of being able to actually bring down those buildings and be able to do so safely and cleanly as to not poison the population, the cost was in the billions. That is why the Port Authority was trying to get out. The Jewish interests of the Port Authority of New York were trying to get out of the liability and basically farm it out to the U.S. taxpayer so that we could flip the bill. But they had a better plan. The better plan was that they would use technology to be able to bring those buildings down. No more disposal problem now. Because the way they went down, all of that toxic smoke that people died, massive amounts of people died, not the ones in the buildings, which obviously died. We see them jumping from the buildings. They were jumping from the buildings not even because of the fires. They were jumping from the buildings because something called directed energy was being used. Same thing they used in Maui last year when I was there to set off these wildfires, right? There's a great book called Where Did the Towers Go by Dr. Judy Wood. I would recommend anybody who wants to know the truth about how those buildings were brought down would read Dr. Judy Wood's book. Because one thing we know for sure, aluminum cans, which is effectively what planes are. Mm-hmm. If we accept that planes went into these buildings, those steel frame spines, girders that came up through those buildings, there is no way that an aluminum plane is gonna cut through that steel and make that building fall in its own footprint.
Yeah.
That's not possible. And I also happen to know architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. I forget what the number is now, but it's close to 2,000 architects and engineers who signed saying there's no way these buildings could have come down this way. No way at all.
The thing is as well, like, because obviously I still think a plane hit it, but I've been hearing all these different theories now. Mm-hmm. And it's just the way it is. But then when people start saying, no, a plane didn't hit it, it then becomes an argument within an argument.
That's the smoke and mirrors. See, they want us arguing about how the buildings came down.
There's no point in that. But then when I see these buildings, the way they went down, it was definitely, I worked in construction, so I know how demolition buildings go down. When you see the videos,
the squibs,
you see the little, you see the bombs going off.
Charges,
And again, when you look at building 7, when it sees it, it goes in on itself at the top, a very controlled kind of demolition.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Two of the buildings, the Twin Towers, that was not a conventional demolition. Here's why. Anyone could go check this. If you demolish a building, first off, let's say this. Never in the history of the world has a steel frame building fallen from a fire, ever. There's a building in China, equal size. It burned for, I forget, 18 hours or something. It was like a blackened skeleton that was left over, still standing. Never in the history of the world have steel frame buildings fallen from a fire, ever. But apparently, 3 did on that day. 3 steel frame buildings fell from a fire. From jet fuel that creates a heat that is not sufficient to be able to melt steel. And even if it did, how is enough fuel from a plane, if it's a plane? Now, let's just accept that version that they say, okay? We could get into holograms and all sorts of stuff. Never mind. If we accept that those are planes and they are full of jet fuel, and that jet fuel ignited, and that's what melted the steel, just think, you don't need to be an engineer. Do you think the whole building, including all the lower floors that haven't even been touched by any of that fire, are going to collapse so that the building falls within its own footprint? But it goes even deeper, because if you do a conventional demolition and a building falls, what you'll have is roughly 15% of the building, the height of the building. So if the building is 100 floors, you're going to have 15 floors of debris left over. Okay. On that day, and Rudy Dent verifies this, as do any of the legitimate investigators or firemen or any of it, there were holes in the ground. Holes. The buildings, by the way, Dr. Judy Wood talks about that, the buildings turned to dust. There is no way that a fire that isn't even sufficient to melt steel is going to turn steel frame buildings into dust. That's not possible. That is absolutely not possible at all. But apparently, 19 dudes with box cutters managed to fly planes into these buildings, and they fell into their own footprint and created holes in the ground. And we had Building 7, which wasn't even hit by a plane, which also came down. Now, that building was a conventional demolition. That building was wired, definitely. And it did have about 15% of the building left over at the end of it. This is famously where Larry Silverstein says, "Oh, pull it." This very famously said, "Oh, just pull it. You know, we've had enough loss of life. Just pull it." What do you mean by pull it? That building was wired. It was wired because it had all these records I was talking about for the CIA and the bankers and all of their frauds. So they got rid of all the evidence there. 3 buildings fell from 2 planes, as we're told, with 19 box-cutting, wielding terrorists. Here's a more plausible story. And it's revealed in something called the Project for a New American Century, Rebuilding America's Defenses. The Project for a New American Century, PNAC, is what's known as the Neocons. Neocon is a pseudonym for Jews. The Jews, Wolfowitz and others, and many other players, Jewish, who played the central role. They wrote that in the aftermath of the fall of the Soviet Union, when there was a Soviet Union, we had 2 superpowers, both nuclear armed, both tempting World War III. The Soviet Union fell, which left one superpower left. And it was this PNAC, Jewish-controlled, nefarious enemy inside the gate, that said in a very famous paper that this provided an opportunity for us good guys, America, to be the cop of the world, to take this position now and to be the good guys and be the cop of the world and be the one only superpower left. But in order to do that, we would have to invade, occupy, and effectively control all the major energy reserves and also all the very valuable mineral deposits, lithium and all sorts of invaluable stuff, which Afghanistan has a ton of, which is maybe why we went there. Iraq had oil, but they had more than that. They said that we should do this, and this would be good for the world because we're the good guys. This is them just lying, like talking amongst themselves. And they wrote this down in a paper, and they said, but unfortunately the American people wouldn't be in favor of this war on terror that we saw that came afterwards. They wouldn't support that because they don't want war. In general, we don't want war, do we? And unfortunately, the American people were too stupid to support this great idea to be the cop of the world. And they said very famously in that document that it would take a catalyzing event like a, quote, new Pearl Harbor type of event. What did we get on 9/11? This is a year before 9/11. Now we have two Jewish billionaires who buy these buildings, which we know Mossad was in those buildings. We have video, and we have proof, objective, undeniable proof, that the Jewish billionaires connected to Mossad by way of deception, thou shalt do war, were in the buildings. They set those buildings up, and ultimately the charges that were used were only kind of smoke and mirrors because it was directed energy. The same thing that we use to modify weather. There was a hurricane that day too, by the way. Nobody talks about that. That is the effects of using directed energy and how it affects high pressure, low pressure, and so on and so forth. And those buildings came down, and the disposal problem that would have been incurred. So Larry Silverstein and Frank Lowy bought these two worthless buildings, which basically transferred billions of dollars of liability over to them. Now think about this. If you're a Jewish billionaire, or you're a billionaire, right, and you want to make money, do you think you would buy two buildings that you know is going to cost you billions when they're half empty, full of asbestos, and it's just going to transfer all that liability to you? Well, they did. Now, either that was a master class, or they're like Nostradamus, and they knew that the buildings were going to turn to dust, or maybe they fucking used technology to bring those buildings down. And you know what? They filed an insurance claim. Oh, wait, no, sorry. They filed two, because those were two events. It wasn't one event. Because we had two buildings come down, two different planes. That's two different terrorist events. You know how many billions they cleared from that? Several $billions that Frank Lowy and Larry Silverstein cleared. So rather than have to pay for the disposal of the asbestos and bring those buildings down in a way that would have protected the life of the American people and everybody in the area, fortunately for them, they turned to dust. They came down, no disposal problem, and they made out like bandits to the tune of billions. And the third building, you're having a laugh, mate, if you're saying that thing fell down from a fire the way it did. It is so ridiculous. But again, this is proof of mind control. The media tells you this official version. The official investigation is an absolute sham. It's a whitewash. It's a lie. Doesn't even mention Building 7. All of these things that I'm saying are absolutely true and provable. But the media will tell you the official version. They continue to parrot it. Everyone says it. And guess what? They blamed it on Muslims. Ooh. By way of deception, thou shalt do war. The Muslims were blamed for a Jewish Mossad operation. And the wars that we fought, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, guess what all those nations have in common? They didn't have a central bank. Saddam Hussein had taken them off. He was going to start trading outside the petrodollar system, which is now going to crumble, by the way. It's over now. He was going to take them off. He got pissed because he got betrayed by America. He served them when he fought the Iranians. Basically, he was our attack dog, and we armed him with chemical, biological weapons. We gave him the missile technology and all of the military might, tanks and everything, to go fight the Iranians, and 1 million Iranians died in that war, including young guys who were underage, who lied about their age to go fight and valiantly defend their homeland. All of these countries that we targeted were Muslim, yet none of them had anything to do with 9/11. It was a Jewish Mossad operation. And the way the buildings came down, the way what they tell us, that's an insult. It's an absolute insult. But most of the people out there are going to believe that lie, because everyone tells them so. The lying media tells them so. The lying politicians tell them so. Hollywood tells them so. So they believe it. Is that not proof of mind control, or am I just crazy?
No, I think, like I said, mate, the mainstream media, I think they're crumbling. I think more and more people are coming to start to realise what's going on, especially after 2020, and more people are now investigating, and more people are wanting to question a lot of the things. Like I said, I'm only coming here to question because I've seen your stuff, and I was like, I'm very interested in this, man. You've obviously spoke about the vaccines in your other podcast. I would tell anybody to go in, because I might have not covered everything in here because there's so much to cover, Ken, you know what I mean? I could be here all day talking to you for hours. We haven't even gotten to Israel-Palestine, you know. For me, I can sympathise towards anything to do with war, mate. I hate war altogether. I hate knowing that anybody's dying and there's children, whether it's in one side or the other. I think it's just shocking. I don't think these things should be happening.
It's close. It's close to me too, because I have a brother. His name is Marcus. He's a Marine, 20 years my junior. I was in the first Gulf War. My war was quite soft in comparison. But he signed up post 9/11 like so many American patriots did. A lot of British patriots too. They signed up. And he was stationed. He was like an intelligence guy. So he was doing intelligence stuff like intelligence gathering and, trying to get the signals from them and so on and so forth. And he was put out in the field, out on the front for certain operations. And one of those was in Afghanistan. And when he was out in the field with the grunts, the guys like me, he stepped on a landmine and his legs got blown off, gone. And so, I've learned a lot from him, like, phantom pains, the legs that aren't there. And
yeah, I've got a friend, my friend Alex Mitchell, had his leg amputated. Yeah. He talks about the phantom leg, and he talks about that as well,
It's incredible, what he, and
incredible
then
what the brain can do.
Really, it's incredible. And he was my friend Marcus. He was put in a military hospital, as you are, and he went through all sorts of stuff there. And I remember asking Marcus last year. I asked him. We were, in one of our many like in-depth conversations, and I said, "Brother, if you could go back, if you could go back in time, instead of stepping here, would you just have stepped over there? I.e., not had your legs blown off?" And you know what he said to me? He said, no. As bad as it is, as much of a loss as it was, it made me the man I am. And he'd rather be a man who's awake, who speaks the truth, and does what an honorable man must do, rather than just wave the flag and parrot the whole hero and thank you for your service. And while there's so much discomfort and so much sacrifice from this, he'd rather be that man and go through that sacrifice and not have his legs than go back and have it all and continue to be stupid and continue to play that role. So, this is part of where, like you as well, I think you fit in the same category. Like, obviously, if you could go back, I'm sure you wouldn't mind, like, knowing that this was wrong and, go back to being the healthy guy, playing golf and all that. But it did make you the man you are, and you are helping people now as a result of your sacrifice. And in this sense, really, I say love and respect, my brother. You can't change the past. It is what it is. You made a mistake. You're paying for it. But hey, through that mistake, you can help others and prevent others from suffering.
Yeah, I mean, I only do what I do because, number one, when I speak out, because I know there's so many other people out there suffering from these jags, and I was just trying to warn, especially children, children number one. And I've spoken to parents whose children have been harmed by these jags. There's young people that are no longer here. And one of the reasons I get involved with doing these podcasts, and like I say, I do everything off my own back, and I've tried to learn all this stuff. And like I said, you were on a certain guy's podcast and I was on it. Mine was the one and only podcast they couldn't put out. So it got to the point, I'm like, well, I'm just going to really need to bring the noise, and I'm going to have to be my own media and do my own thing, because let's be honest here, we can't trust the mainstream media. So we might as well try and investigate things ourselves, and that's why I do these podcasts and try to raise awareness, mate, and bring the noise, I like to say. But I'm going to need to finish this up, mate. Obviously, it's scary times ahead. If you had a message to the people out there around the world, in the UK, what would be the message to? Do you think that the world's going to change? Do you think more people are going to come to this way of thinking? Do you think it can change? And what do you think? And what do you think it needs?
The most fitting way for me to close it out in a fairly short and sweet way is something that I'm so blessed to be involved in as a director of an organization and also a spokesperson for something called, and people can go to the website, although it is being built and it's going to be much better real soon. So it's called makewarhistory.org. There is a plan that I'm involved in because I want to make war history. The only war I would ever want is a war of defense. If someone's coming in to invade Britain or America or wherever you live, They're coming on a pack of lies, weapons of mass destruction, stuff like this. Then we need to fight. You need to defend. You need to protect the homeland, protect your family, protect your interests, protect yourselves. But I would rather that we end this war system that only the bankers win from. And here's how we can do it. We can make war history. In short and sweet explanation of how to do this, all of us, people feel powerless. You know, they feel like, oh, the world's always been this way. I'm only one person. What can I do? Your petitions ain't going to stop this. Your protests ain't going to stop this. All the tried and true things that we do, none of that's going to work. Lobbying your politicians, so on. They're still going to keep doing all these criminal things. But there's one thing they do need, aside from our consent, more than anything else, and I'll quote a Rothschild who said, and I might have said it earlier, but let me say it here again. Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. They don't care what you think. In fact, they laugh at all of you. They're laughing at us, laughing all the way to the bank, literally. What they do care about is your taxes. They do. Because the debt of this country, 7 trillion pounds, that's not payable. Your kids will still be paying that, and it'll be bigger if they survive. America is $34 trillion in debt. That's not payable. It's never going to be paid. Adolf Hitler, you know what he did? He said, fuck off to the bankers. And all that debt that they incurred from Versailles, he said, fuck you. They made their own money. He issued labor certificates and other things. Took that impoverished, destitute nation, and he created the most powerful, highest standard of living nation in the world with the happiest people, who treated black people and others with respect, everything. We can make war history, and here's how we do it. If you're sick of it. If you're happy with the amount of taxes you're paying and the way the government's conducting business, move on. You know, have a good day. But for those of us who are not happy with that, here's what we can do. All your council tax, your income tax, and all that stuff, that money is being used to commit crimes against international law. We have conventions in this country. America signed up to some of them, but not as much. The Convention Against Torture, the Convention Against Genocide, the Fourth Geneva Convention, which outlaws the targeting of civilians, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. We have many conventions that are contracts between nations. So this is how, if you wanted to do business with me and we made a deal, then we would write a contract that would be our deal in law. Nations do treaties. So the nations that sign on to these treaties have a contractual obligation, and their duty is to represent our lawful obligations as sovereign states amongst the family of nations. They're not honoring that. They're not. Why do all of them support Israel? Why does Keir Starmer say that the Israelis can cut off the water, the food, the electricity? Because they work for Israel. And they're using our money to favor the Israeli state, who has the highest standard of living in all of the Middle East, and in fact among the world. A much higher standard of living than the British people have, the American people, Canadian people, all of them. And we're gifting them with tons of money through our taxes in a multitude of ways. We have a duty, not even a right, we have a duty to not pay into a system which is violating international law and favoring a state that is now undoubtedly involved in genocide, real time. So here's what we do. Make war history. We're going to take all that money that you're currently paying in taxes. That money is going to be put into a trust. It's going to be put into an account with trustees, and the only way those trustees can disseminate that money is one of two ways. Once that money that you would pay in tax, council tax, income tax, all the taxes, once it goes into that account, this isn't going to be 10 people. This isn't going to be 100 people. This isn't going to be 1,000 people. It's not going to be 10,000. It's not going to be 100,000. It's going to be millions. That's my job. And those who want to get behind this, it's going to be millions, minimum, in this country and around the world. This isn't just for England. This is for America, Canada, Netherlands, all over. We put the money into the trust for each one of our nations, and then we're going to have a notice, a lawful legal notice. What we're going to do is we're going to serve notice to our representative governments. They represent us. This is not a dictatorship. Officially, it's a representative constitutional monarchy. Now, We serve notice. Here's what we're going to say. We're going to say, listen, as citizens or subjects of the nation, we are concerned about our being accessories to the worst of crimes, including genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. Here are our concerns, because if we do just pay this, and you as our representatives actually use our tax dollars to pay for these crimes, that makes us guilty of the crime. So we are accepting our duty and therefore informing you that this money that we put in the trust over here is only going to be released to you when you give us a written commitment to stop certain things, such as all trade with Israel right now. Done. Any weapons technology going to any state that is guilty or involved in any form of international crime, over. Stop it now. Now. Once you respond to our notice, our lawful notice, and in writing say, yes, we see your concerns and we agree that we will honor our duty and obligations as representatives in your so-called democracy to not violate international law. When they come back with that in writing, then we will release those funds to you. But you know what? This has been done already. And guess what these governments do once they're served notice and those monies are withheld? They don't reply. They don't reply. Why don't they reply? How can they possibly reply and say, we are, of course, honoring our obligations under international law. None of our money is being used to violate it. They can't do that because they are using our taxes to commit crimes against international law. So what happens when they don't reply? Guess what happens to those taxes? It all comes back to the people. Now you spend that money lawfully, properly. Take care of your family. Maybe we build our own infrastructure. Maybe we make our own police forces. Maybe we make institutions that truly benefit society and protect our children in the future. That's an option right there.
100%. Just a quick one before I finish, mate. What does the tattoo on the eye represent? Because a lot of people are going to say, just quickly, what does it represent, mate?
That's what all the trolls will say. Oh, he lost me with the teardrop. How can you listen to a guy with a teardrop? The teardrop, funny enough, I've been in a war. I've been in combat. I never killed anybody. Thank God for that. Thank God. Honestly, I thank God for that so much. I might have been one of the 22 a day that committed suicide. That's American figures from the post-War on Terror. The teardrop is actually very directly connected to the vegetarianism I was talking about, but also my investigation in history, the bolshevik, revolution, the Russian Revolution, World War I, World War II. We're talking hundreds of millions of people who've died terrible deaths, including children, women, innocent people. They've died in ways that most can't even imagine. And I'm the kind of guy where if we watch a movie or something, like I'll cry right now. Like I am very empathetic. I don't have to live an experience to feel the pain of others. And as a man who's definitely capable of being a man and doing what a man requires, if you're not crying about like the burning bodies and children and all that, something's wrong with you. Something is wrong with you. The teardrop is a reflection of the sorrow I feel, the sadness. Like really. I've done this before when I think about it, because really, like, you look at the fucking madness of this world and the things that we're party to, it's just not something you could feel good about. If you want to live in willful ignorance and live in cognitive dissonance, well, okay, that don't work for me, man. I feel sorrow. But I got this, that's the tear. But I got this one later, which is, this, it's the fist. Whenever I take a picture, I do this. It's not the communist symbol. It's power to the people. Like, come on, man, let's stand up. Let's do what we're capable of. Don't just cry about it. A man is just sitting there crying all the time. No. Like, cry, get it over with, and now, boom, do something about it. So that's what the teardrop is. So all my enemies out there, you go on and bring up that teardrop and go ahead and use that, because that's all you got. And I'll tell you what, I ain't got no shame with the teardrop on this face. And I wasn't trying to play the hard man. I wanted it because that's the way I felt. And I didn't get it for at least couple of years, and I finally was just like, you know what? There is just no better way for me to express. I'm not trying to scare somebody, although I probably do look kind of scary to people. Like, you don't generally want to fuck with the guy who's got a teardrop tattoo. And I know people think, you know, it means you killed somebody, and it does mean that for convicts and whatnot. It's, you know, if you have more than one, it's however many people you killed. I never killed anybody. It's a reflection of the sorrow I feel.
Well, Ken, appreciate your time, my man. It's been a very, very interesting conversation, and I appreciate you for doing this, my man.
Thank you, my brother. Really, God bless you and your family. And I really, I'm going to continue praying for you. And I have a feeling you're going to find that health back. I'll do my best, and you stick with God, man. Keep doing what you're doing. You're making a difference, brother.
I appreciate that, Ken. See you later, mate.